WW City News Time, 9 o'clock.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, May 6th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 6 degrees, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. A pop-up COVID-19 vaccine clinic in Overbrook was booked up fully for the day, an hour before the clinic even opened. Here's City News reporter Alex Gouge.
Dozens waited in line to book their slot for a COVID-19 vaccine, and the majority were able to get one. The pop-up will be administering doses until 7 o'clock this evening to residents of the Overbrook area. Mafode was one of those who was able to secure a spot and tells me how early she lined up.
We got here around 5:30. We were waiting on the line, and then I was able to get an appointment for 11 o'clock.
Unlike other sites across the city, OPH says it won't be widely publicizing these pop-ups, but it will be targeting the information to those in the specific areas. This includes notifying residents with the help of community partners through flyers, by phone and email, and through door-to-door community outreach. Another pop-up vaccination center is planned for tomorrow at the AMA Community Center. 600 doses will be administered to residents living in 5 high-risk areas identified by OPH, including Ledbury, Haringate, Ridgemont, and Greenboro East. In Overbrook, Alex Gouge, City News.
Now, the vaccination effort in Ontario now open to people age 50 years and older. As long as you turn 50 this calendar year, you can book your appointment through the Ontario portal. The 50 and older age group extends to those with high-risk health conditions and also a number of employees who cannot work from home. They're now eligible to get their shot. The newly eligible workers include those in education, childcare, food, and manufacturing sectors. To avoid wasting any vaccine doses, the Eastern Ontario Health Unit has expanded its standby list. Anyone who's over the age of 18 who's not been able to book a vaccine appointment can register to be on that standby list. If there are doses left at the end of any particular clinic, you may be contacted by the unit to get to the site and receive your shot. Sometimes appointments are missing or canceled, leaving a leftover supply. And to avoid waste, the Eastern Ontario Health Unit will contact people on that standby list to see if they can come in immediately to receive their shot. There are 60,000 vaccination appointments available in Ottawa through the end of the month. The City General Manager of Emergency and Protective Services, Anthony DeMonte, says he expects more to be added in June. So far, 41% of adults over the age of 18 in Ottawa have been vaccinated against COVID-19. City News Time 9:02, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Enjoy the sunshine that most areas will get into today as we're back into a stretch of clouds and showers beginning tomorrow. The high today, 14 degrees, partly cloudy tonight near 3, and then tomorrow mainly cloudy, showers for the afternoon and evening, the high near 13. For today, the high, 14.
And right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's 6 degrees. A family of 9 displaced after a fire in Haringate. Residents in a 3-story townhome called 911 indicating smoke in the basement of their home on Cedarwood. Firefighters arrived shortly before 5 this morning, attacking that fire quickly, preventing it from spreading to the neighboring unit. The fire was controlled just moments later. Both the Red Cross and Salvation Army are helping out that family of 9. Vaccine developers Pfizer and BioNTech are donating doses to inoculate athletes and officials who are prepping for the Tokyo Olympics. Delivery of doses set to begin this month to give Olympic delegations time to be fully vaccinated with a second shot before they arrive in Tokyo this summer. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Inform your opinion.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
COVID fog. I'm in the COVID fog. The fog is rolled in. I didn't really think there was such a thing as COVID fog, but I think I have it now. It took more than a year. The COVID fog, it's rolled in. COVID fog. Try to stay focused, Rob. Try to stay focused. Good morning. Rob Snow Show, City News. Yeah, that's us. That is us. Yes, David. Yep. Us. Yep. Everything's good. Looks good. We are all out, pedal to the metal, until 12 noon. Lots of news coverage, great analysis of the current events of the day. Randall Denley's going to join us, author, post-media columnist. His column for the Ottawa Citizen this week was about the new civic campus for the Ottawa Hospital, something we talked about yesterday with the CEO of the Ottawa Hospital, Cameron Love. 5,000 people are going to work there eventually. But it's going to take a long time to get there. That new site won't open for another 7 or 8 years, probably, best case scenario, assuming liberal politics don't get in the way like they did the last time. But Randall's been writing about the role that we all play in making sure this project happens in our community. Because, I mean, it's almost guaranteed. There's going to come a time when we're all going to require the services of this new hospital. And to go from pretty drawings at a city council meeting, imagining what this hospital one day might look like, to actually cutting the ribbon on it, is going to take a $400 million fundraising effort from the community, which Randall Denley calls this week in his column a significant challenge. And as well as you know, Randall Denley writes about the Ford government for the National Post. And the cabinet minister in the hot seat of late has been the Minister of Long-Term Care, Dr. Marilee Fullerton. I mean, not a day goes by, right? We play Question Period just about every day on this program from Queen's Park, a few minutes of it every day, just to give you a taste of it. I mean, how many times has Andrea Horvath stood in the legislature and said, you have to resign, Marilee Fullerton, resign. Will you resign today? No, I'm not resigning today. Tomorrow comes, will you resign today? No, I'm not resigning today. So Randall Denley's very familiar with Marilee Fullerton's West End riding. So I'll ask him what he thinks all of this is doing to the chances of Dr. Fullerton's re-election in Canada Carleton. I mean, the Liberals a few years back, they went after her hard during the last election campaign. They called her a racist. And I don't know anyone who thinks it's going to be a cakewalk in Canada Carleton a year from now for Dr. Fullerton. We'll get into that. We're actually going to do a fairly deep dive into Ontario politics this morning. We have a new panel discussion coming up at 9:30. We're going to try and do this on a weekly basis. It'll set us up nicely for the election campaign next year. And we're calling it, well, I came to this, I make these big editorial decisions on the Rob Snow Show, okay? It's called Ontario Politics This Week. Not to be confused with This Week in Ontario Politics. Okay, I might get confused because I'm in the COVID fog, right? But we have two great political analysts coming up on the program this morning. That's why I get the big bucks. Ontario Politics This Week. Welcome to Ontario Politics This Week. I'm your host, Rob Snow. Coming up, Andrew Brander. He's on the right side of things. He's with Crestview. And my friend Lindsay Maskell will be back on City News. She is a dyed-in-the-wool liberal, used to work in the Premier's office for a man named Dalton McGuinty. So this is coming up 9:30 to 10 o'clock, and we're going to jump right into everything that's been going on. The election campaign in Ontario a year from now, mark my words, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be here before you know it. A year from now, we'll be in it. We'll be in the thick of it. And if you looked at the polls a month ago, you would have seen Doug Ford on cruise control, easily on the way to a second majority government. Now, not so much. Don't write off Dofo, but he needs some mojo. Paid sick days, Highway 413, Minister of Long-Term Care, should she resign? Who the heck is Stephen Del Duca? Why do I care? Is Andrea Horvath really going to get a fourth crack at an election campaign? All between 9:30 and 10 o'clock this morning. It's going to be fun. Federally, James Bezan, Conservative MP, on my show this morning, defense critic. The Canadian forces are in crisis right now, and the political masters are running for cover. The defense minister is running for cover. The PMO in crisis mode, running for cover. And it's often been said in politics, the cover-up can be worse than the crime. I don't know if that's the case here because the allegations of wrongdoing are bad enough. But we know nothing was done, despite all of the damning allegations of sexual misconduct. The highest levels of the Canadian Armed Forces. Instead, heads stuck firmly in the sand. And what we're seeing now is a run-through of the Liberal playbook. Like we have seen so many times before with this Trudeau government. Committees are shut down. There are filibusters. Witnesses are called, but maneuvers are made behind the scenes, so witnesses never appear. And eventually, the game plan is, the strategy is, the public will grow tired of this story. They don't want to see it in the news. They don't want to read about it in the newspaper. They just want it all to go away, fade to black. It has worked so far. Worked with SNC Lavalin, worked with We Charity Affair. There's no reason to think it won't work again. You're just going to wait it out. We are going to talk about what the various committees have been able to find out so far about who knew what and when they knew it. Cover up. Another one. And Doug Porter, chief economist, the top economist at the Bank of Montreal. And we're going to talk about this run on commodities, which is actually good for Canada. We have an abundance of almost every commodity. Anything you can pull out of the ground or chop down. We have it in Canada in abundance. Agricultural commodities, corn, soybeans, grains, oilseeds. We talked to Rutter's Elevators yesterday in Chesterville. How happy was he? Michael Obey. Very optimistic, right? We have a lot of happy farmers in Eastern Ontario right now. Believe you me. Very strong prices. They just need some good weather. Next week, the weather's supposed to turn. Fingers crossed. Huge demand for corn and soybeans, our two cash crops in Eastern Ontario. For the West, the oil price is coming back. I mean, this time last year, oil prices were zero, right? Zero. The Esso around the corner here this morning, David, was $1.33 a liter, right? And it's in the Globe and Mail this morning. Steve Chase reports, grab this newspaper here. Steve Chase reports this morning, along with Emma Graney out of Calgary. Headline, Line 5 pipeline, a ticking time bomb that must be shut down, Michigan says. And by the way, shut down when? Wednesday of next week, less than a week ago. $1.33 might look like a screaming deal this time next week. Okay. The oil price is coming back, though. Iron ore, key to steel making, multi-year highs. We have a lot of iron ore. Labrador is built on iron ore. Base metals, $10,000 a ton for copper now. Lumber prices. You've been to Home Depot if you can find it at all, lumber, right? Rebounding economy, Joe Biden infrastructure plan in the United States. But what does this also mean? Inflation. Inflation. How can all of these prices be hitting 8, 9, 10-year highs, all-time highs, and it not spell inflation? Inflation means what? Higher interest rates. We have a superheated what? Housing market that will respond badly to what? Higher interest rates. It's all connected. We get into it with Doug Porter. And during the talkback hour, this is going to be a hot one. I want to hear from you, okay? 4 months between shots. I want your take on this. People vaccinated today, and you see our reporter Alex Gouge is at one of the pop-up clinics in Overbrook this morning. They took appointments. They sold out in an hour. The people getting vaccinated today are likely going to get an appointment, maybe, maybe not, for a second dose in 112 days from now. 16 weeks from now. 4 months from now. It's one of the longest intervals for dosings of vaccines in the entire world. Canada. And it is not what the manufacturer recommends. What does the manufacturer recommend? 21 days for Pfizer, 28 days for Moderna, 4 to 12 weeks for AstraZeneca. Here in Canada, 16 weeks. Because of a recommendation from NACI. And that's all it is a recommendation. There is nothing stopping the Ford government from shortening the time it takes to get a second dose of vaccine. I will ask you this morning, should it? It says it's thinking about it. Should it stop thinking about it and do it? Have your say on that topic this morning during our Talkback Hour on the Rob Snow Show on City News. Hey.
Here at the Thirsty Maiden, we offer a variety of products. So everything from breakfast items, so it's breakfast sandwiches and scones, which have become a staple item here at the cafe. We have an assortment of pastries and cakes and desserts. So we're really big on our dessert bar, which a lot of people come here for. And of course, our delicious coffee beverages. So we do offer not your typical lattes, things like a chocolate banana coconut latte, cinnamon coconut, which is my favorite, and our take on even a pumpkin spice, which we add nutmeg and a dash of cayenne in just to give it a bit of a kick. When you start a business, you don't factor in all the things that could go wrong. You think anything that goes wrong, any failure, it's got to be something on your shoulders. You didn't market right, you're carrying the wrong products, you didn't price your items correctly, all the things, right? But when this pandemic began, things going through my brain were I didn't factor in a pandemic. And we were just starting to grow. We were about to blow up, and I think I spent 2 days crying. And then I shut my business down for, I think, a period of 2 or 3 days. And just being at home during that time, I realized this is not me. Anybody that knows me knows I'm a hard worker. I don't give up, and I'm a go-getter. And I started to think, well, I should probably just start clearing out my freezers and posting and seeing who wants to buy what. And that was sort of how I built my momentum back up. I realized that there's still a large number of people that wanted to support us and were looking for the items that I had to provide. So we started there. Then I reopened literally not even 3 or 4 days after I'd closed my doors, and then started doing curbside pickups and deliveries. Started doing the deliveries myself, free deliveries to the local community, going as far as Bell's Corners and Carp as well. And that's why we're still here. This community has really kept us going a year into the pandemic. We've had a changeover of staff a couple times now, and situations change, and when you can't offer hours and hours for your employees, you don't blame them when they have to go elsewhere. So I think that's also been one of the challenges is recruiting, training, and then they leave, and then bringing in more people and recruiting. And anybody in this industry will tell you that that's something we deal with on a regular basis, whether or not COVID's in the mix or not. But more so now, because every time there's a lockdown, there's a risk of, will we make it through? And then you lay off more staff. And again, their situations and their circumstances change.
Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
And we welcome back to our show author and post-media columnist Randall Denley. Good morning, Randall.
Good morning, Rob.
What did you think of the big unveiling at the City Council meeting, the committee meeting this week for the new civic campus of the Ottawa Hospital?
Curiously, Rob, I think it's a lot better story than you would have gathered from the way it was presented. This plan has been kicking around for quite some time now. It could have been revealed well before now, but okay, pick your moment, that's fine. But how do they do it? Well, why don't we take it to a city committee, and then we can have a Zoom call, and then people can watch it on the city YouTube. And while we make a pretty boring and endless presentation, to be honest, Cameron Love's part was okay. The architect's part was brutal and endless. But you're watching this thing, and then you see on the side, here's all these little city councilors, postage stamp size, watching it. They're scratching themselves, looking at the ceiling, doing a little work on the side, bored to death, right? This is not what you want.
Okay.
And what they should have done is had a technical briefing for all the media. I hate to say it, but they gave the story just to the citizen, which is great if you're with the citizen, as I am. But they should have got everybody involved in a technical briefing, had their own separate event, and I think where they went wrong on this too, to some extent, is that the guy who's really been driving this for last year is Graham Bird. He's a well-known engineer in the city, did the convention center, did the Royal Ottawa Hospital, among many other projects.
Yep, was big into the Lansdowne rejuvenation.
Yes, and he, I've spoken to him. He's very excited about this. He's very happy with what they've got at this point. He's an incredible enthusiast and a great explainer of this. But for whatever reason, at this point, they don't want to bring him to the forefront. Let's get the architect. I mean, not every architect is sort of flamboyant in presentation, but man, this was at an extreme. So you could just see the councillors were bored to death by this thing, and it went on.
Yeah.
Far too long.
Okay. So they should have made us, because you're going to need public buy-in, which is the thrust of your column. So you need to get the public enthusiastic about it.
Yeah,
right?
that was
Make
the
an
only
event
job
do
this
some
week, is to
splash.
get the public enthusiastic, really start to build confidence. And I would judge by the reader feedback I've got in my column that there's a reasonably high level of skepticism in the community because they've been talking about this new hospital for a long time.
Oh, I was surprised. 14.
And they had a previous design, which was very simplistic, wouldn't have worked on the site and all that. It's been canned. So now, people, wrongly in my opinion, but understandably, look at this much more detailed, well thought out plan and say, well, yeah, here they go again. They got some other, pretty pictures about all this. I'll believe it when they start to dig holes in the ground and put something up there. So I think that's part of what they need to overcome to get people behind it. And they have a $400 million fundraising campaign requirement. So it's a huge amount of money for Ottawa. I'm sure that, corporations and wealthy people will be among the first tapped, but I think if you don't get the, $100, $500 kind of thing from ordinary people, it's going to be hard to get there. And even that point aside, if you want to turn to corporations and wealthy people and ask them for, say, $1 million, the first question would be, so people, they're really excited about this, right?
Yeah.
So if I do this, people are going, hey, good for you, this is great.
Yeah.
Well, we're working on explaining and so maybe you should come back when, I'm seeing more excitement. So the excitement part is really critical here. And, it's not typically what hospitals do. If your real job is running a hospital, generating public excitement isn't normally.
Yeah, you leave that to the foundation people. That's their raison d'etre.
Yeah, they're kind of held back at this point. They feel it's premature to really sort of talk about their campaign. In fact, they're raising money for other things right now, research. They brought it in the lottery. Maybe they're just trying to get all this cleared off before they move 100% over to the new hospital. But to me, it's a bit of a mixed message. So if the hospital is so important, then why do you have a campaign running for research dollars?
Right.
Sure, that's always important, but how important is it? How imminent is it? Now they're going to take most of the next year to consult with everybody on this, and maybe that's necessary because it takes a while for these things to rumble through the provincial approvals process, so maybe that's the best thing to do for the next year. But it's one of those frustrating things, I think, Rob, where there's quite a bit of information, but not really so much that somebody could say, oh, well, yeah, I see what's wrong with this. So I'm not sure what the consultation will accomplish exactly. I'm sure there's some people who want to dig deep into the details of how well the patient flow works and all this kind of stuff. But most people just want something much simpler. They said, look, we want a modern, functional hospital.
Yeah.
It's bigger. It's got one-person rooms. It's kind of what you would expect. It would be the kind of hospital that we all see if you watch any medical show on TV. I always laugh when I see these things because they walk into this room, the door glides across, the room's about the size of an apartment.
And they're right in there. Yeah.
It's wonderful. It's almost like a spa practically.
Oh, yeah.
You compare it to a typical, Canadian ward. It's you and, maybe as many as 3 other people in the room coughing and everybody shuffling around. I know that would make poor television, but it makes...
And then you get to leave that room and go to another room. And you wait there for a while and then go to the other room.
Right. Or maybe take a turn out in the hallway because that's a good place to put people. I mean, what we have now is just like grossly inadequate. And I spent some time, not as a patient, but visiting and so forth in the Civic over the last number of years. And I think they're doing their best, but it's a pretty bad building. It should have been replaced a long time ago. So great, we finally got a plan.
Sell it. You got to sell it.
And I'm sure the provincial government's going to get behind it. And a number of readers have also raised what I think is an important question that, well, wait a minute, isn't healthcare a very basic government service? Why does the community have to raise $400 million to get a new hospital?
Yeah.
I mean, good point. The provincial government's policy forever under successive governments is, we'll pay for the building. But look, if you people want beds and MRI machines and all that kind of stuff, I mean, that's really up to you. But we don't get into that. You think, well, how crazy is that, really? It just doesn't make any sense. We don't do it for any other kind of core public service. You wouldn't say, we're going to build a new school in your community. But, if you want desks and the rooms and all those fancy things, well, that's up to you. Go raise some funds. Hold a lottery. It's because we've always done it that way. People go, well, okay, I guess. But I think with the scale of this, it's reasonable to question whether the scope of what they expect from Ottawa is too much. It's not like we're Toronto, where there's a vast corporate head office sector that you can tap into.
Okay. We have about 2 minutes left here. Marilee Fullerton has been on the hot seat daily calls for her resignation as the long-term care minister. Do you think she can win again in Canada, Carleton? Very quickly.
I think that depends a lot on the party. If the party wins, she'll win. It's a funny riding. It goes both ways, right? It's my riding. We have a federal Liberal and a provincial PC, so obviously people are flexible here in terms of who they choose. I think she's being unfairly blamed for a lot of what's happened in long-term care, and that's in fact what I'm writing about in the National Post. To be up later today. If you look at that big LTC report, Rob, it's not quite the damning report that people are making it out to be.
Okay. Thank you so much for this morning and your insight, Randall. It's greatly appreciated again.
All right, my pleasure, Rob.
Author and columnist Randall Denley. The news coming up, and then Ontario politics this week on City News.
one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, May 6. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 7 degrees. Here's what's making news this hour. All 500 appointments for a community pop-up vaccine clinic in Overbrook filled about an hour before the first appointment was scheduled. People began lining up with their proof of address hours before the sun came up this morning, making sure they got their time for a shot before 7 o'clock tonight, when that is scheduled to close. Province's portal for vaccinations opened at 8 o'clock this morning for anyone age 50 or turning 50 sometime this calendar year. The province also announcing certain essential workers, including teachers and frontline emergency services, can get into that portal to book their appointment as well. Eastern Ontario Health Unit expanding its standby vaccine list. Now anyone in that health unit over the age of 18 can apply to avoid wasting any doses of vaccine through missed or canceled appointments. The standby list means people could be called at any time to go to a local vaccination site and receive their shot. City News Time at 9:31. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
I'm looking forward to this. We call it Ontario Politics This Week. Brand new segment here on the Rob Snow Show, not to be confused with This Week in Ontario Politics. But nevertheless, let's get into things from the Liberal side. Former advisor to Premier McGuinty, Lindsay Maskell, back on the Rob Snow Show. Good morning, Lindsay Maskell.
Hi, Rob. It's good to talk to you.
It's great to hear from you, Lindsay. It's been far too long.
Too long.
Andrew Brander, more on the right side of things. He's with Crestview Strategies, senior consultant there. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
And
I'm so excited for this new segment.
You are? Wow.
I am.
That's good. That's
and
good.
It's a fantastic name. Couldn't be better.
I know. Yeah, we had the creative team working overtime on that one. The creative team of one, okay? Do you know Lindsay? Lindsay? Andrew? Okay, all right. Let's get into it. A little more than a month ago, polls suggested that Doug Ford's PC party would easily win a second majority government, okay? On cruise control, double-digit lead in the polls. It was Del Duca, but then the third wave hit Ontario hard, and lockdowns are back. And ever since then, the polls have tightened considerably. Lindsay Maskell, how do you handicap this race right now? How do you look at things right now?
Well, it's an interesting time as people maneuver through the pandemic and their viewpoint on politics. And of course, they've never had more time or more interest than they have had right now. So it's really interesting to see, just even when you do polling, about how easy it is to get people on the line and get people talking. So it's a pretty exciting time.
So people are engaged then. People are engaged then.
People are very engaged.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
So obviously not having a seat is a challenge, but Del Duca has actually, and his team has been really strong and able to position themselves in having the government is now responding to them and the pushes around childcare and long-term care and the highway issues, and so they have actually been able to really get attention, because also the Queen's Park Press Gallery has definitely been giving them a fair shake on holding this government accountable, particularly because so many of the issues, what happened in through March and spring in the first wave. People were very understanding that governments were trying to respond in a whole new world, an unprecedented situation.
Okay.
But, by the time we came to town to the second and third wave, we were expecting more from our provincial government. So he definitely took a hit.
Okay. All right. Andrew, how do you see this race right now? I mean, is it? Do you think it's still Ford? Can Dofo get the mojo back? What's going on here? How do you see it here?
I think he can. I think I'm still extremely bullish on the PC's having the ability to hold on to government in the next election campaign. The polls are extremely volatile, as we've seen federally as well. I think Doug Ford's approval rating still remains higher today than it was going into the pandemic. And while all his choices have certainly not been perfect, he's consistently showed up and been accountable. He's apologized when he needs to. And I think no one was voting for Doug expecting perfection. He's still sort of Uncle Doug. But to Lindsay's point, I do think the Liberals have done a good job in seizing onto some of the issues. What they haven't done, what Del Duca hasn't done, is seize the attention of Ontarians. So even if he's being given share of voice by the media, I think he's struggling to connect with the people of Ontario. It's been a very difficult year for the opposition to break through really on any issues, and let alone, a party that only has 8 seats in the House. Recently, Michael Coteau announced he's leaving, running federally. So I think Del Duca's really struggling to connect with people.
Okay. Yeah, but Lindsay, if I could, let's just jump to Lindsay. Did you work on a campaign for him, Del Duca? Didn't you work?
Yeah,
with
I ran his local 2014 campaign.
2014 campaign, right?
Yeah,
okay.
So
I've had him on the program many times. Like, he's a smart guy, and if people think back to the Kathleen Wynne government, he was a cabinet minister in the Kathleen Wynne government. I mean, he was a transport minister, I believe.
Correct.
And then, at committees and whatever, he gives as good as he gets. He's very good at he has very sharp elbows. He's a good debater. Make no mistake about it. And he's a good organizer, from what I understand, right? He's a good organizer.
Organizer as a political staffer, but then also went to law school, legal counsel, worked with trades unions. So he has a really interesting background that he's able to get in there and definitely hold his own. The other thing I would say is that, it's not that, so he does bring some experience in government. And although anybody would say there's obviously some baggage that comes from having, we did have a long run in government, but he was new to that, right? So he got elected in a by-election in 2012, and then I ran his first campaign in a general election. So he was pretty fresh to that team, and but came with lots of experience. And I would say, to Andrew's point, people haven't had an opportunity to meet him yet. We are not in an election. People are obviously very tied up in everything being about the pandemic and getting by in their day-to-day lives. But there will be a point where the first introduction opportunity moments aren't going to just happen in a debate. But that will be the point, as you said. It'll be a really interesting moment when people get to be introduced to him, those that do not know him.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Just to Lindsay's point, I think time's running out, right? I mean, let me be very clear. It's very unfortunate timing for the Liberals to have. I think they were one of the last conventions before the pandemic.
Yeah,
really
I remember.
started. So,
I remember interviewing Lindsay. Like, it was literally like 2 weeks later, the whole world was shut down, and Lindsay was going to a convention for crying.
We already were on site with all the hand sanitizer and all the protocols already in place.
Yeah.
That's right, and I feel for my colleague Lindsay. We're seeing the same thing federally with Erin O'Toole, but that's the fact, which is like they have to operate in the current atmosphere that we're working in, and he has to. Del Duca's really got to find those opportunities to break through. Look, in the past, the Liberals have relied heavily on third-party advertising. That, in large part, is being addressed through some new government legislation that is severely going to restrict the amount of advertising that third parties are allowed to do. So they can't count on that. Right. In the first quarter this year, the PCs raised more than $1.3 million. The Liberals raised a tenth of that less than the NDP and the Green Party. Not good indicators for someone who's running for the province's top job.
Okay, I want to talk about the NDP just in a few minutes, but I want to move to, if Doug Ford is one thing, he's loyal to his cabinet ministers. I mean, he's moved some of them around for sure, but he calls them, all-stars and everything else, and he has really defended his Minister of Long-Term Care, Dr. Marilee Fullerton, who has faced daily calls for her resignation. I mean, every day it's you should resign, you should resign, you should resign, you should resign. What do you think Doug Ford is going to do here? What do you think he should do here with Dr. Fullerton? I mean, does he defend her and shuffle her? How do you see this playing out, Lindsay? What do you think is going to happen? What are some options here for Doug Ford?
It's unfortunate, and it's actually also, I'll just say this, as a woman working in politics, I have to say, I want her to do well, right? I'm invested in any woman taking a leadership role doing well. Okay. So it's been painful to watch, particularly when these outbursts of her walking away from the microphone and not taking media questions. That's so hard when so many people have families that have been affected by long-term care. And probably even difficult for Ford to watch, whose own, mother-in-law is in this position and expecting more. Right. It's surprising because... And Ford has kind of, I think, grown immune to, whether it's the questions from the Queen's Park Press Gallery or the allegations from the media. He just kind of lets it roll right off him. Yeah. Dr. Fullerton seems to struggle a little bit with that. Went hard on his finance minister for travel. And I would even say that we saw with what he did with his minister of education on, out one day saying schools will be open and then kind of throwing them under the bus the next day. All of his ministers need to be, in a position of making sure they're doing the best they can be doing, because he has shown that he will make moves. And I do think he's trying to give her a fair chance. Yeah. But I also am so surprised because as a physician, she's obviously very educated. We as Liberals appointed her to the LIN, would expect that she is somebody that could really shine. And so it's particularly surprising that in those high pressure jobs that she is not living up to that. Okay. And particularly in the case that, I like using the example of the job. First wave of this, the expectations, obviously people were going to give them a chance, but there was all this talk about putting an iron ring around long-term care homes. And let's be honest, the NHL did a better job of protecting their players than we did of protecting people in long-term care. We knew exactly what needed to be done. We saw it executed in other jurisdictions, and we failed significantly. And you can obviously say every government has a long history and mistakes made when it came to how we protect, our oldest population and our most vulnerable. We all wear that, but that particular second and third wave deaths in long-term care solely falls on their shoulders. And so she needed to spend the time at the mic and take the questions and could have had a real leadership moment. And it was actually kind of hard to watch because I as a woman, I do want her to do well. Sure. So this is Doug Ford from This Week Yesterday, right, Dave? Yeah, okay. Defending his minister. Go ahead.
Mr. Speaker, I have full confidence in my minister. She's done more as a doctor to serve those most in need than anyone in this chamber. Anyone, bar none, for 30 years. She's dedicated her life to protecting the most vulnerable, caring for those who are sick on the front lines, and that deserves respect. Her voice and experience are vital as we correct the decades of inaction in long-term care sector caused by many governments. Okay. Because all right, thank you. So he's not throwing her under the bus right now. But what are some options here for Doug Ford when it comes to Dr. Fullerton? Andrew, what do you think?
So very quickly off the top, I feel the need to just disclose that in my professional work, I represent the Ontario Long-Term Care Association. However, obviously the views of today are my own. But I'd agree with Lindsay. Look, there's a lot of criticisms of the minister that, quite frankly, could have been completely avoided. I think there needs to be some work around her ability to be compassionate. and sort of live up to the accountability expectations that conservatives demand of not only the public, but the conservatives demand of their cabinet ministers. But to your point, Rob, the Premier is an extremely loyal person. He treats his cabinet like his family, and much in the same way that Stephen Harper approached his cabinet, unless digressions are of a deeply personal or error in judgment type situation, he seems to be rather forgiving. Minister Thompson, Minister Urick, some others who had a really rough start at the early days of government, they were shuffled but kept within the leadership team. To Lindsay's point, and I'm glad she sort of accepted the fact that the tragedies that we witnessed in Ontario's long-term care homes were as a result of decades of neglect from successive governments. And Minister Fullerton has, for her part, invested more in the sector than any other government in Canada in history. So having said all that, I do think, though, there is a burning desire from Cabinet for a shuffle before the next election.
Right.
An obvious time to do so would obviously be when the legislature adjourns for the summer recess, exactly in June. So I'd expect to see some ministers, Minister Lecce, Minister Fullerton, some of the ones that were in a bit of a hotter files to be moved around to create a bit of distance.
Yeah, maybe Sylvia Jones too. Maybe Sylvia Jones too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Very good. When we come back, we're going to talk about Andrea Horvath. I don't know. I just don't know too many leaders who get 4 kicks at the can. Is my point. So we'll talk about that next. Does Andrea Horvath really lead the Ontario New Democrats into the next election, or will she make way for a new leader? Just purely speculative at this point. But that's why we do Ontario politics this week on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
Opening a business especially in a pandemic, in that kind of situation, is very challenging. First, people don't know me, people don't know my product. To build a new clientele, to build a trust for them, to show them that I care about it. I do love my food. That was the biggest challenge. And of course, in all lockdown, I had to face it regards my employee, guests, ladies, what they work for me. I didn't want to tell them, sorry, I'm closed, I'm not having a job for you. No, they have families, they have kids to feed. So this is very important because we are family orientated. And we decided to open. We, of course, essential business. So been very tough, very, very tough, as we didn't see people on the road. Market was completely quiet, but we knew it that we have to wait, and we knew it that we're gonna be fine. In this town, we built online shop, Vedel Online, and we did Uber Eats, which one is picking up and is very, very popular. We have a really good feedback. So this is the song for my heart. And and we try to expand. I'm thinking about opening another location. So I want to make Vedel famous. I want to make the Vedel place to be for all the families with kids. Try the traditional food, what their grandparents cooked in the countries when they're from, or even Canadian people. They're more than welcome to come and try our famous pierogis. I try to be passionate about my food, organic food made with love, with all homemade, organic. So you can find food from all over the Europe: Polish, German, Ukrainian, Romanian, French, Armenian. So all kind of different types of food. Homemade lunches. We focus on the homemade lunches, grandma style. I keep always saying, like in my Genia Babcia house, how she cooked. I wanted this love and this food over here because I believe that will bring all people around me. And all organic cold cuts, lovely selection of sausages, cheeses, European cheeses, great selections of mustards, French cookies. All what you need from Europe you can find here at the Vedel Touch of Europe. If you think good way, that's it. You have to, I had the option to cry in the corner and say, oh, pandemic is coming. No, you need to stand up and fight for it and have your eyes open, think outside of the box and do it.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Ontario politics this week on the Rob Snow Show with Lindsay, Maskell, and Andrew Brander. What do you think, Lindsay? Is Andrea Horvath going to be the leader of Ontario's New Democrats going into the next Ontario election campaign?
So right now, I actually think she will be. And it's so interesting because, as you said before the break, who gets 4 kicks at a can, right? And the thing that really shocked me was, and this is probably something that Andrew and I as campaigners would also agree on, we would know how to win that campaign. The fact that we have if we were NDPers, which we're not, but if we had, we would know how to have gotten Andrea over the finish line. We can see what went wrong with their campaign. And so there are some really clear things that could have been done differently that would have resulted in a win. But of course, they were very happy to have come in second because just improving their position at all seemed like such a big deal to them, much like how, Jack Layton is heralded, obviously, with getting a chance to be the
orange
official
wave.
position.
Yeah, but it makes you wonder, I mean, given the Ontario Liberals was so unpopular at the time, if the New Democrats were going to win then, when are they going to win?
Exactly. So that was their big chance. And I am surprised. And I remember going to a Broadbent Institute event right after the election, and they just, I was like, wow, because I thought it was going to be really difficult for her, because in my mind, and as a Liberal, if that had been my party, we would have treated that person as somebody who let us down, that they lost that opportunity. But I will say this. I am surprised, and I don't know if we see it happening because we aren't physically in the building as much as we used to be. But there's a couple of very impressive people in her party that if I were her, I would be very nervous if I wanted to be the person to go to the polls again. Like somebody like Marta Stiles. Like she has a really strong education.
Stiles. Yeah, absolutely.
So there's some good alternatives they might want to consider, but they definitely do things different than our respective parties, and just she would not even be there now. In another world, because that was her big chance.
Well, she wouldn't be around if she was a conservative, Andrew, because the conservatives like to eat their own. It's like you're one and done. Like get out of here. Okay. I guess it's just not the way. Andrea Horvath, what do you think? What do you think is going to happen between now and then?
Yeah, it's not the way the NDP governs themselves either, which is why she will be the leader going into the next election. And like Lindsay said, I don't necessarily think she should be, but the parallels that Lindsay drew to Jack Layton and the NDP there are actually quite strikingly similar in the sense that the Ontario NDP became the official opposition because they reaped the benefits of the overwhelming disdain for the Liberal leader. They weren't expecting it. And sometimes you look at them in the House of Commons and the Ontario legislature rather, and they still seem surprised to be there. When Jack Layton's NDP won, they matured the NDP in a way to better attract candidates and break out of sort of this Mickey Mouse opposition status, and the Ontario NDP hasn't been able to do so. But to the point, it's not through a lack of talent. Merit Stiles, I agree. Gurtan Singh, Jennifer French, these are all very strong voices within the caucus who seem to be propelling Ms. Horvath, but to the point at the top, if she's been trying for this long to be premier, it's never been closer for her. So I don't think she's going anywhere.
All right, let's talk. Let's wrap up here on this one then. Highway 413, how big of an issue is this? We have the Trudeau Liberals are for federal political purposes, because they know it's battleground Ontario for them in the federal election. They've announced a federal environmental assessment of a provincial highway, Highway 413. How big of a deal is this? What's going on with Highway 413, Lindsay?
Well, it's a fascinating issue to watch.
Okay.
So lay of the land is, of course, Ontario Liberals came out and said they don't support it. They would cancel it, invest that money in infrastructure in schools. So rebuilding our schools.
Right.
It is in the 905 battleground. It's kind of a highway that nobody thought they needed or wanted. But it was announced as a big infrastructure project in that area.
Revived is how the Toronto Star reporter described it on our show.
Some of the green belt and some tricky issues for sure.
Yeah.
And the other interesting factor, of course, is, and Doug Ford has an interesting position of liking to brushing up against some mayors, is all of the mayors in Peel Region are actually against this project, including Patrick Brown and Mayor Bonnie Crombie, Caledon. All of those mayors are against this project. So we didn't see it highlighted in the budget along with other major infrastructure projects that has been announced.
Right.
So it has definitely become a battleground about, are they going to continue to push it as something that they thought was a big priority for Peel politically when they're up against so much on this, and also the fact that the Ontario Liberals came out with a big policy move and announcement to provide an alternative of what would be done with those billions of dollars for a highway project that really isn't needed.
Okay. Andrew, very quickly, a minute or less.
Yeah, Fed's certainly interfering in the political vision of Premier Ford. We talk about the municipalities that are lined up against this. Let's not forget the Premier is still Ontario's mayor at heart. He's a municipal guy. He sees these types of projects as key to his re-election. He views projects like the 413 actually making a difference daily in the lives of people in Brampton. Similarly, think of, what he's doing with the Ontario line for people in Scarborough and Etobicoke. The Tories right now hold 2 of the 5 seats in Brampton, losing one last time in a recount. They want to win more. They need to hold these seats in order to hold on to power. So I'm watching this closely. I think the Feds may have bigfooted him on this one, but it will be interesting to see how he finds another solution.
Hey, let's do this week next week, okay?
This is going to be the official countdown to campaign 2022.
That's right. That's 2022. Great to talk to you this week. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Ontario politics this week. That's Lindsay Maskell, Andrew Brander. I'm Rob Snow. The Talkback Hour, vaccine dosing intervals, the hot topic. I want your take on it at 750-1310 here on City News.
1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 101.1 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, May 6th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 7 degrees. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Pop-up vaccination clinic at the Overbrook Community Centre saw all of its slots filled more than an hour before the site was even set to open. It comes as that same pop-up had its appointments filled up just minutes after opening the doors back on Tuesday. Here's City News reporter Alex Gouge.
The pop-up clinic is set to administer 500 doses of vaccine by this evening at 7 o'clock, and many resorted to waiting in line in the early morning hours to ensure they got their appointments. Staff handed out scheduled times to return at throughout the day to Overbrook residents in line. Manitoba was one of those able to secure an appointment and tells me where she heard about the pop-ups.
On Facebook, through the city councillor, I think Ralston King, he posted it that they'll be coming to give out the vaccine in my neighborhood, so I decided to come and get it.
Unlike other clinics in the city, Ottawa Public Health is doing a less widespread information campaign on the pop-ups and is instead focusing on getting the word out in the specified areas. Another pop-up clinic is slated for tomorrow at the AMA Community Centre. 600 doses will be provided to residents 18 and up living in high-risk areas identified by OPH, including Ledbury, Haringate, Ridgemont, and Greenboro East. In Overbrook, Alex Gouge, City News.
City News time, 10:02, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Enjoy the sunshine that most areas will get into today as we're back into a stretch of clouds and showers beginning tomorrow. The high today, 14 degrees, partly cloudy tonight near 3, and then tomorrow mainly cloudy showers for the afternoon and evening, the high near 13. For today, the high, 14.
And right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's 7 degrees. To avoid wasting any vaccine doses, the Eastern Ontario Health Unit has expanded its standby list. Anyone who is over the age of 18 who lives in that region who's not been able to book a vaccine to this point can register to be on the standby list. If there are doses left at the end of a clinic schedule, you may be contacted by the unit to come to the site immediately and get your shot. Sometimes appointments are missed or canceled, leaving a leftover supply. Now, to avoid any waste, the Eastern Ontario Health Unit will contact people on the standby list to see if they can come in right away to receive their shot. City News time, 10:03. The price for gasoline at its highest in almost 3 years now, and it could get even more expensive very soon if the governor of Michigan gets her wish. More from our senior business editor, Mike Eppel.
The price of the pumps has been tracking the wholesale refined market out of the U.S., where that price is also close to a 3-year high. And you add in the taxes for carbon taxes and the HST, and that has elevated the price that much more compared to where it was back in early 2019. The price for oil also elevated of late on economic optimism, the theory that Americans will be driving at record mileage this summer with an economic reopening. We're also looking at the potential for a supply disruption next week if Michigan follows through on a plan to shut down the Enbridge Line 5 pipeline. It's currently in a court battle, but could take a lot of supply out of the Ontario market starting next week. At the Business Centre, I'm Mike Eppel.
And a bit of a unique lawsuit out of Toronto. The district school board is suing the city after a high school was destroyed by fire. This was a couple of years ago. Now, legal documents show the board wants $90 million in damage from the city of Toronto, the province, and police. Its unproven statement of claim says the money is needed to rebuild. Now, the board alleges firefighters failed to put out a small fire in May of 2019. It says the flames then erupted again the next day, destroying the building. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
The 4-month wait. The 4-month wait. Question for you, 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Get my pen ready. Writing down yes, writing down no. Going to keep score here, okay? Here's the question that we have for you for the Talk Back Hour. Given the improvement in the vaccine supply, seems more reliable now, millions of doses arriving here every week, should the Ontario government shorten the interval between the first and second doses of the vaccines? Or, I mean, you say yes to that, or do you think no? Because this is the alternative. No. Keep trying to get as many first doses into as many arms as possible. Give as many people as humanly possible the protection of at least one dose. Okay, this is the strategic question that I have for you. What is your answer to that question? We're going to keep track of your answers. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. I'd love your take on this topic. This is the one issue I want to get into today when it comes to vaccines in this country. Because people keep bringing it up. It comes up on a daily basis here on the Rob Snow Show. When people call the show, I'm not crazy about waiting 4 months for my second dose. How many times, David? How many times do we hear that in the run of a day?
Every day.
Times. Yeah, every day.
Single day.
Every single day. And I want to know what you want the Ford government to do, because it's a provincial thing, okay? The decision-making power really lies with the province on this one. What do you want the Ford government to do about the 4-month interval between the 2 doses of vaccine? It is not set in stone. Your government here in Ontario, led by Premier Ford, is not obligated by any federal statute to wait 4 months before giving you a second dose of vaccine. All it is a recommendation from an organization, NACI, and that's all it is. It's a recommendation from NACI. That's all it is. Same organization that you keep hearing about, National Advisory Committee on Immunization, that seems only to exist to create confusion and anxiety, to tell you the truth. And back in March, it was first week of March, NACI published its recommendation saying it was of the opinion that waiting 4 months between the 2 doses of vaccine should be okay. It made that recommendation, remember, when the supply of vaccines, not so great. Not so great. Every day the Rob Snow Show is filled with calls like, where are the vaccines? Where are the vaccines? News story after news story, from one end of the country to the other. Supplies running low. Vaccine nationalism. Certainly the supply was not reliable. The stockpile not as abundant as it is now. So in making that recommendation, NACI said that it felt that it had, quote unquote, real world evidence that people had high levels of protection after 1 dose of vaccine. So it said, it's okay. You can wait 4 months between doses. But that doesn't mean, and this is what I want you to understand, okay, ladies and gentlemen, 750-1310, 750-1310, your hour, the Talkback Hour. That doesn't mean the Ontario government is under any obligation to make you wait 4 months before booking you an appointment for your second dose of vaccine. And the reason I bring this up is because every day, and this is good news, okay? Every day the number of people qualifying for vaccine appointments increases, right? Every day the government broadens the list. Okay, these people go here, go there, because there are more doses of vaccine available than there used to be, especially the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. There now seems to be a steady supply of that vaccine coming into the country. So the age limit for the doses is, getting lowered. More locations to get a vaccine, pharmacies, clinics. That list keeps growing. The Pfizer vaccine has been approved for people over the age of 12, which is not to say people over the age of 12 are going to get a shot anytime soon, but they could, I suppose, if it was available to them. When they would get a second shot, that's anyone's guess. But given everything that's going on, because most of it is pretty good news, right? Do we need to stick Does the government need to stick to this 4 months between shots? Or should it find a way, move heaven and earth to shorten the wait time between the doses? You shorten the interval between the doses, between the first and second shot. Should it be shortened? That's a decision that Doug Ford can make today. Christine Elliott could announce that today. I'm not saying she will. I'm saying she could. $90 days, 60 days, 30 days. Okay. Whatever. 750-1310, 750-1310, Rob Snow Show. City News Talkback Hour. Debbie in Bell's Corners. Good morning, Debbie.
Good morning, Rob.
Hi.
I think they should, pardon me.
Yeah.
They should shorten the dosage, the length of time between the dosages.
It's just a recommendation right now, from NASA.
Yeah.
This 4 months, right? Just a recommendation.
Sorry, Rob. I'm sorry. As soon as they said that, I decided I'm not getting my shot until that it can be followed. I don't understand where all of a sudden some organization like NACI comes in, makes a recommendation, and everybody caves, and they don't follow what the manufacturers of these vaccines have said to do, how to give them.
Well, the alternative is you try to get as many first shots into as many people as possible. That's the alternative, right?
Right.
And that's what we're doing right now. We're trying to get as many, so at least more people will have some protection. That's the decision that we have made. As a Commonwealth, that's the decision the government has made.
Yeah.
The Ontario government has made, as a matter of fact.
Well,
but
me,
that was when there was
work.
very little supply, right? So,
yes. And that's a decision they made. But for me personally, this is a personal thing.
Yep.
I will not, and I don't know if I'm alone or I'm not alone. I'm more than willing. I would like to get the shots, but not the way they're being presented right now in time frame of 4 months.
Okay, Debbie.
I just can't do it.
All right, Debbie. Thank you. Okay, Eric. Good morning, Eric. Morning, Eric. Yep. 4 months between doses.
Okay. Well, I've got probably 4 points to make if I can. First of all, I'll refer back to Dr. Mona Niemer's statement that this, in essence, is a population-level experiment without informed consent. And I still agree with her. I think she still stands by that statement. I think a couple of things have to happen.
She has also said, and she's on the record, she said it on one of the cable television shows, one of the political television shows, Dr. Mona Niemer, the chief science advisor, said, quote, studies have shown that extending the interval between doses has had a negative effect on their efficacy, particularly in seniors. That's what she said on television.
And you know what? There would have been an easy walk around on this one had they taken it. And that was follow the antibody titers in vaccinated folks. There was an easy way to generate a lot of data that could either support or refute that 4 month contention. Anyway, neither here nor there.
All right.
So Pfizer and Moderna need to grow a pair, and I think they need to step up and talk to Health Canada and remind them that they got the approval based on clinical trial based vaccine intervals. Period.
Right.
And I think Health Canada needs to put its foot down and say to the provinces, listen, you're using these vaccines in essence off-label.
Off-label, yeah.
And we're not going to stand for it.
Okay.
There's that's what should be done. I'll remind you again that the NACI, who's been around since the mid-'60s, have been developing long-term policy advice on vaccinations forever. And they base their decisions primarily on current available science. But that, as a group, they were never designed to make the rapid decisions that they're making based on limited data that they're making now. They've done a good job on things like Hep A, measles, mumps, rubella, pertussis, pneumococcal pneumonia, rabies, RSV treatments, influenza. That's where their strength is. Their strength is not in rapid response to quickly changing situations. So I think the manufacturers have to push Health Canada, and Health Canada has to say, listen, stop using this stuff off label. Go back to the 21-day for Pfizer. Go back to 28-day for Moderna, and just get on with it. Period.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Great points. Be right back. Talk back hour. Dosing intervals, the 4-month wait on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
It started out with a small outdoor booth in what was called Artist Alley, which is actually the area just outside our store on William Street, where for a couple of years we sold our jewelry directly on the street. And then we slowly evolved to having an indoor location in this building, 55 Borrowed Market Square. We then moved to another location in Place de Ville, and then moved back down here on Dalhousie Street at Irrigere in the 90s, and then back into this building again in 2000 as a collection. I do a collection of jewelry called Cirque that's mainly beaded work with a combination of semi-precious and vintage beads. And then she does a hat collection called Fanfreluche that's all cut and sewn hats in a variety of fabrics and for all of the seasons of the year. We've curated and sourced the artisans that we represent in a lot of different ways over the years since it's been, since 1985. Some people come to us since we're known, and other artisans that we represent might recommend that they come and see us. Some people we find at craft shows, or we see their work, somebody wears it in, and we go and track it down and bring it. And then some people, interestingly, are with us in one medium, and then sometimes they evolve to another. They're all Canadian and mainly local. With the roughly 50 people that we have, I'd say more than half of those are Ottawa-Gatineau, and then the rest are from other cities in Canada, Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, etc. If you can afford it, go to a small business and spend some money. It's lovely when you come in and, give me a pep talk and tell me how much you love this place and you've been coming here for years. But if you can afford it, please spend some money too, because all the pep talks in the world are not going to pay my rent, which is still full rent even when we're closed. Then secondly, if you can't afford to spend money, follow the businesses that you want to support on social media. Go to their Instagram, go to their Facebook, follow their Twitter, and then retweet, share their Facebook page, like and comment. Because if you can't afford to, as many of us can't right now, to do extra expenditures, doing all of those little things like that will raise the visibility of those small businesses, and hopefully for them result in some online or curbside or other business for them.
Time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
The wait time between a first and second shot of vaccine in Ontario, 112 days, 16 weeks, 4 months, one of the longest in the world. It is not, as has been pointed out, it's not what's recommended by the manufacturers of these vaccines. For Pfizer, 21 days, Moderna, 28 days, AstraZeneca, 4 weeks to 12 weeks. In Ontario, 4 months. The Ford government could shorten that wait time if it wanted to, if it thinks it has the reliable supply. And it's thinking about it. I'm asking, should it stop thinking about it and actually do it? That's my question for you here on the Talkback Hour at 750-1310. 750-1310. Julia.
Hi, Rob.
Hi,
Thank
Julia.
you so much for taking this topic on. Nurses are really concerned about what's happening.
Okay.
And just to let you know that a lot of the nurses who were due for their second doses, in the hospital in March were pushed to June.
Yeah,
So,
terrible. There's a story in the.
meeting-
There's a story in the paper this morning in the Citizen. Some ER doctors in the emergency room haven't had a second dose yet.
Well, nurses and doctors that's being deployed to help out in the COVID unit and other units still don't have their second dose.
Crazy.
So we're quite fearful of that, that we might get sick and then not be able to provide care, right?
Unbelievable.
Like it's not us being selfish.
No.
Can we still stay on the job?
Right. So you're an ER nurse, Julia? Are you an ER nurse?
No, I've been a nurse for 40 years, still working.
Okay.
I teach, and I also work in the vaccination clinic.
Oh, I see. Okay.
On my
Okay.
off time, and we just have so many people coming in. We don't have a problem with people not wanting vaccines. That's
No.
for sure.
Yeah.
But I understand the nasties sort of saying, get out the first doses to, essential people. But now it's time to start moving up the doses, and their recommendation was up to 4 months. It wasn't
Up
4
to.
months.
It's up to 4 months. Yeah.
And nurses are getting our appointments booked at 4 months if we get them in June.
Yeah.
Because I'm worried that the first dosing, extending the eligibility, plus having to start second doses for many of us, I just worry that we don't have a supply.
Okay. Thank you, Julia.
So-
Thank you. Going to let you go. A bit of a rough connection there. 750-1310, 750-1310. We're talking about the 4-month wait. David. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Rob.
Yes, sir.
Rob,
Yes.
the delay was only brought about by a lack of
Supply. Yeah.
So straighten it out.
So the supply seems to be fixed now. So
That's right.
Right. This is a provincial thing too.
Yes.
Remember, right?
Okay, and now I sympathize with that nurse. Those people should come first. I'm giving up the wife. Not every day, 5 times a day, she's bugging me. When am I going to get my second shot?
Right.
96 years old,
Yeah.
and she's worried. Okay.
Sure.
And all the people that on March the 12th that were at the Sportsplex weren't given a second date, and we still haven't been given a second date. Both sisters, who talk to her every day, have their second date.
Okay.
Doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't make sense.
Okay,
Nope.
so look after our doctors and nurses, and then start like they did at the very beginning. Do the 90-year-olds.
Do the 90-year-olds at 85, 80, and on down the list, right?
Exactly. It's
Yep,
not.
okay.
It's not rocket science.
No.
But Rob,
Yes.
I watched a very disturbing show last night
Uh-oh.
on Fox.
On Fox?
Yes, and it was from a fairly reliable guy, Tucker.
Okay. I don't watch him anymore, so I don't know. Whatever.
He doesn't exaggerate. But
Okay.
but last night the heart attack came up. Nearly 4,000 people have had heart attacks since getting the vaccine. There's quite a rebellion.
Oh, who knows? How many, come on, there have been how many billions of doses of vaccine? Like 1.1 billion doses of vaccine, David, have been given out. 4,000 heart attacks? Like, who knows if these people would have had heart attacks anyway?
It was U.S. data, not worldwide
U.S. data.
data.
Well, even in the United States, it's something like 230 million, 240 million doses have been given
true.
out, right?
That's very true.
Yeah.
Except it's happening, or it has happened. So,
Yeah, but
and the
who
delay
knows?
doesn't help.
I know. Yeah, and they're not waiting 4 months in the United States.
They're
I
not.
mean, they're walking into Sam's Club and getting vaccines for crying out loud. David, I'm going to jump. I'm jam-packed with phone calls here this morning. On the 4-month wait, Blackburn Hamlet. Kathleen, good morning.
Yes,
You want
Rob,
that shortened?
Pardon me?
Should we shorten the wait time? Doug Ford could shorten that wait time, should he?
However, though, yes, in my case, we've had our first injections in March and do not have an appointment until July.
Right.
But on the same token, on the reverse, I am very concerned that an ER doctor or a doctor in ICU and nurses have not had their shots.
Right.
Or
Second
also,
shots, yeah.
our police have not had them. I don't think our fire department has had them.
Paramedics.
And our prison guards have not had them.
Right.
So,
Well, actually, I had a prison guard call into the program the other day from Innis Road. He hasn't even had his first shot yet.
That's it. That's exactly what I'm saying. And I know a young man that's working there personally I've known him since he was 15 years old.
Right.
And he has not had his shot. So now, on my selfish point, yes, I would like to get my second, we would like to get our second shot because we are in the older age group.
Right.
My husband has just turned 80.
Okay.
But till July, but on the same token, I feel for the as I said, the doctors, the nurses, the police, the prison guards, or other people who are out there facing the public. I stay home. I go to the grocery store. And the other thing is that we have a grandson who has a very weak immune system. So the only way we've seen him for months is to drive out to where he lives. We use a cell phone. He takes his mom's phone, and we converse with him looking through the window of the front of his house.
Right. Crazy, right? Yeah. Okay,
so
Kathleen.
I'm of two minds.
Yeah, I can see both of your minds.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. One more? Yes. Wayne in Stittsville. Wayne, good morning.
Hey, Rob.
Yes, 4-month wait, sir. What do you think? Narrow it? Shorten it? Cut it down?
Absolutely narrow it.
Okay.
Right from the get-go, same as you, it's like that nasty organization is worthless.
It's creating a lot of confusion for a lot.
Recommendation, like they say, based on real-world data. What real-world data? They said that right from the get-go. Without how far were we along? Only 2 months of.
Well, this is it. I mean, how can we know? Okay, now they say they know, but how can you really know? And I'm going to read you some of the scientific literature that's been published recently about this. How can you really know that it's safe to wait 4 months between doses? The whole vaccine program in Canada has only been running 4 months and 3 weeks.
Exactly.
So how do we know it's safe, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they haven't, done any with all the doses coming in, like 2 million a week there for the next couple of weeks, and Moderna is now sending in 1 million.
Yeah.
Like, we're being flooded now. But I just booked my appointment this morning with the 50 plus. Just got through, and my second one's end of August.
End of August, right?
Over 100 days later.
Yeah. It's supposed to be up to 112 days.
Yeah, 105. So
105 for you. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Thank you, Wayne. Thank you. Going to run halftime. Talk back hour. The 4-month wait. Our hot topic today here on City News.
101 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, May 6. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 9 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's 8. Here's what's making news this hour. 3,424 confirmed new cases of COVID-19 in Ontario, along with 26 more deaths. In Ottawa, 108 new cases. There are 23 more in the Eastern Ontario Health Unit, 10 more in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, and 7 new cases in Renfrew. These results come from just over 54,100 completed tests. Booked before even opened. The second community vaccination clinic at Overbrook Community Centre had doled out all 500 appointments between 9 and 7 today before 8 o'clock this morning. People waited in line in the pre-dawn hours for their chance to get their vaccination slip. In an effort to avoid wasting any doses of COVID vaccine in its arsenal, the Eastern Ontario Health Unit has expanded its standby list. Anyone who lives in that health unit area who's 18 years of age or older can register for the list now. So if there is a missed appointment or leftover doses at the end of a clinic, those who have signed up to be on a standby will get called for their shot ahead of the provincial schedule. City News Time, 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
When you read about this, you hear this term off-label, the waiting time between doses, 4 months between the first dose and second dose, 112 days. It's called off-label. It's an off-label recommendation. I heard an interview yesterday on the radio with one of the top people at Pfizer Canada. And he said this is the longest wait time between doses in the world, this 4-month wait, and it's certainly not recommended by Pfizer. It's what's called off-label, because the label says 21 days. 21 days, not 112 days, 21 days. 21 days. And I've done some reading over the last day or so getting ready for the program this morning, and what I've learned is that while NACI thinks it's okay for people to be waiting 112 days between doses, not everyone agrees. For example, as I mentioned in the first half hour of the program, Canada has a chief science advisor, Dr. Mona Niemer. And she said in a media interview, quote, "Studies have shown that extending the interval between doses has had a negative effect on their efficacy, particularly on seniors, particularly in seniors." Quoting here, "The response to the first dose of the vaccine in the people who are elderly, in the people who are immunocompromised, is actually not that good. And it wanes quite rapidly." Okay? Canada's chief science advisor. And these are her creds. Dr. Mona Niemer, right from the Government of Canada website. Before she was named Chief Science Advisor. Professor and Vice President of Research, University of Ottawa, Director of the school's Molecular Genetics and Cardiac Regeneration Laboratory, PhD in Chemistry from McGill University, postdoctoral training in molecular biology at Institut de Recherche Clinique de Montréal and Columbia University. Okay? Oh, you have a BA and watch YouTube videos. Good for you. Good for you. Studies have shown, quote, that extending the interval between doses has had a negative effect on their efficacy, particularly in seniors, end quote. Question. Talk back hour. Given the improvement in the vaccine supply, this is all because of supply, it's improved. Okay, let's be happy. It's improved. Should the Ontario government shorten the interval between the first and second doses for the vaccines? Or, no, keep trying, get as many first doses into as many people as possible? How do you answer that question? Right now, Talk Back Hour, second half. Here we go. Chris and Arnprior. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Rob.
Morning, Chris.
Short answer, yes, should shrink. but prioritize those that don't have the first in certain areas. I'll give you an example.
Okay.
I'm 55. I'm a volunteer first responder, so I do search and rescue across Ontario and Quebec. Okay?
Yep.
I live in a zone that is not a hot zone yet. I've registered at both my house addresses and my business address. I have 2 houses and at 2 pharmacies, and I do not have my first shot.
You don't even have a first shot. And how old are you again?
I'm 55.
55, okay.
Yep. I've registered, and I've even talked to other police officers. They do not have a first shot. And I got a call the other day to do a search and rescue, red alert, and they expect me to go to Quebec or other parts of Ontario. I'm a volunteer.
Right.
And I don't even have a first shot.
No first shot. Okay. All right. So you'd like to get a first shot before we start talking about second shots.
Yeah, now they should do second shot acceleration. Don't get me
Second
wrong.
shot
I think
acceleration. Okay.
They should follow the labels of the pharmaceutical companies. The 21, the 28-day recommendations should be followed versus some made-up number because of supply.
112 days.
Yep.
Yeah.
But they should prioritize. That's teachers. That's people in first response. We're the ones getting out and moving about. Others can stay at home and be, their stay-at-home orders. That should be their mechanism for now until the rest of us have our proper shots so we can, because we're the ones moving about.
Thank you, Chris. In our prior, thank you. Couple of lines available there, folks. 750-1310, 750-1310. Let's go to Cornwall, 750-1310. Cornwall. Leslie, good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Morning, Leslie. What do you think about this 112-day wait time? The Ford government, it's just a recommendation. The Ford government can shorten that wait time. It has the power to do that. Should it do that?
I think the thing, the main thing is they're listening to a group who have been coming under fire, basically just from responses that they give to the media in regards to their own families and what they would recommend.
Yeah.
And we're listening to this group. I think one of the things we have to be concerned about, could Canada become the source of a variant that becomes resistant to the vaccine?
The Alberta variant.
When we get medication from our doctor, antibiotics, and we all know and hear about the scare about antibiotics, the way that they're used or whatever, that they could become useless.
Yeah, antibiotic resistance, it's called. Antibiotic resistance, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
So if you've got a 4-month period, the manufacturer says 21 days, so that's what's been proven.
Yeah.
If you say, now we're going 4 months, and the efficacy rate is depleted as it goes on, and the virus attacks your body.
Particularly in seniors. And we know that the COVID-19 it can ravage somebody who is elderly, right?
But I think this goes farther into anybody that has received the first dose and then catches the virus. I've always respected the comments that have been made by Eric, as he seems to be well-informed and someone of his background. And I haven't heard mentioned that, hey, maybe we're creating a possibility of a variant or a mutation developing that becomes resistant to the vaccines that are available to us right now. And
I don't know about that, but we are going to have.
Neither do I.
Yeah.
But then again, it's a question that I've asked myself.
Yes.
Based on the fact is that when you're given medication, when you're given treatments, when you're given anything from the medical field, it basically says you follow the manufacturer's recommendation, and this is what you do for the product to be effective.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Okay, let's move along. 7-5, there's a line available right there. There have been 2 papers published in the BC Medical Journal, one in March and one in April, all about this recommendation about a 4-month interval. And the first paper from the BC Medical Journal, published March 10th, done by Royal Columbian Hospital, British Columbia, looked at published and unpublished data, and it said it's probably okay to wait a little while. Quoting here, upon administration of the first dose of the Pfizer vaccine, partial immunity is acquired against severe COVID-19 symptoms, typically by 7 days, with 52.4% efficacy between 7 to 14 days and 89% between days 15 to 21 after dose 1. Protection continues to climb to 92.6% for the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine after the second dose. Of note, single-dose efficacy was not a primary outcome of the trial, but rather extrapolated by subgroup analysis, thus based on fewer data. The Moderna vaccine showed 50.8% efficacy on the first dose, days 1 to 14, 92.1% efficacy at 14 or more days after the first dose. No clinical trials have been able to judge how long immunogenicity lasts following one dose. But we do know that efficacy after the first dose increases with time until the second dose is administered. And then it goes on, quote, based on unpublished data available to NACI for both the Pfizer-BioNTech and Moderna vaccines, there was no difference in vaccine efficacy between the people who got their second dose at day 19 and the people who got it at day 42, which is 6 weeks, okay? Not 16 weeks, 6 weeks. Importantly, there was no decrease in protection between the first and the second dose, okay? So 19 days later, 42 days later, no difference. But the recommendation from NACI is now 112 days. And the entire vaccine program in Canada has only been running 143 days. We gave the first doses out in Canada middle of December, 4 months, 3 weeks ago. But NACI recommended back in March, 4 months, okay. The chief science advisor says it's not okay. And the research published in the BC Medical Journal in April concluded, we don't know. Because the whole program has barely been running for 4 months. Quote, April edition BC Medical Journal. Given that less than 4 months have passed since the vaccine program was approved in any jurisdiction, longer-term data are not available yet. Whether there is a further decline in immunity beyond day 42 is not known yet. Beyond day 42. 42 days, you're probably okay. Beyond that, we can't say for sure. We can't say for sure. $112 days, though. Up to 112 days, you wait for a second dose. But the supply has improved. So since the supply has improved, ask a Trudeau cabinet minister if they think the supply has improved. Since it's improved, should we still be waiting 4 months between first and second shots? Ted, what do you think, Ted?
Yeah, hi.
Hi, Ted.
Yeah, I got my shot last Sunday. Oh, thanks for taking my call, by the way.
No problem.
I got my shot last Sunday. I called you last week and let you know I had to chase around for it, and I got it.
Good.
I got the AstraZeneca.
Okay.
That was literally the day before all this nonsense about the preferred vaccine nonsense came out.
Yep.
And so that upset me a little bit. And I was holding out for the Pfizer vaccine, but it wasn't. I didn't see it in the future coming very often or very soon. And obviously that changed because I could have signed up for it today. I'm 54 years old. But when I got my shot, I never got a second date. And I'm hearing a lot of people that got AstraZeneca, they know their second dates and stuff, and I have no idea when I'm supposed to be getting my next one.
They didn't even give you a date for a next one?
No, they said
really?
They had my information, and they would text me when it was time, whatever that means. But what I have no interest in is mixing and matching vaccines.
Okay.
I was hoping for the Pfizer vaccine. I took the AstraZeneca. I thought I was doing my part.
You were.
Getting my shot.
You were.
When I'm.
Yep.
Yeah, and then all this stuff came up that kind of bothers me. But anyways, my only other 2 cents that I want to put in was the 12 and up approval. It makes me a little bit nervous. I have 3 young kids, an 8, a 12, and a 13-year-old.
Right. Why would you be nervous, though?
Well, because I'm 54. I don't really care about quote-unquote long-term effects, but there's no indication of what long-term effects are on kids with this. And, I just don't know. I'm not saying there is long-term effects, but, what if there are? What if there are for reproduction or what have you?
with the young people. And what one rumor I had heard. I live in Kempville, and the rumor I had heard is that, for example, all my kids play hockey, that they won't be allowed to play hockey until they get vaccinated. And you know, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if they're going to be allowed to go back to school in September. It just seems to be happening really fast, especially for the kids.
Okay. All right, Ted. Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Okay. Thank you. We'll stop here, and then we'll take all your calls, and we take some more. You call 750-1310, Rob Snow Show, City News.
An old-fashioned traditional grocery store. You're going to find a butcher, okay? You want a steak cut a certain way, you're going to get it. You know, there's flour piled in the warehouse. There's mixers on the floor. There's flour on the floor. The bakery's rented out to Frank Nicolo. It's him and his son come in at night. They mix the dough, they roll the dough, and they bake the dough. It's not the traditional frozen and thaw and put it in the bin, okay? It's made from scratch 7 days a week. It's probably the only bakery left in Ottawa that does that. You know, then customer service. You know, we're big on that. The cashiers, the deli. You're not, if you ask for something, they're not going to point. It's an aisle number 7. They're going to bring you there, okay? If you have too much groceries out, we'll take it out to your car. You know what I mean? There's nothing we don't do for our customers. And we evolved around our customers. They would come in and say, you know, can you try getting me this? You know, can you get me this? So that's how we built the lineup we have now, okay? So we have a lot of unique items that someone that came over to, you know, live in Canada hasn't seen this particular product, but we sourced it and we have it for them that, you know, like something they used to have as a kid. We have a lot of those unique items, a lot, you know, from like all over the world. And we source it through, you know, distributors in Montreal and Toronto that bring in the product in bulk, and we piggyback off of them. Probably the largest European deli in Ottawa. We sell lots because people buy lots. It's nothing really complicated about that. You know, we turn over a lot of product. You know, we package it properly. We buy, and we're always consistent. You know, you're always going to buy, you know, Cuddy turkey breast, you know, San Daniel mortadella. You're always going to get the same brands. We don't flip back and forth to save 20 cents. It's always the same brands, the last 29 years. Best sandwiches in town. It's simple. It starts off with fresh bread every day baked in the store. Anything that's left over goes to breadcrumbs. So you're getting a fresh bun every day that was baked probably 4 hours before you get here, okay? Not only baked, made, like, you know, mix the flour, roll the dough, proof the bread, and bake the bread, okay? Then all the ingredients come right off the shelves. You know, your lettuce, your tomatoes, all your condiments, and they're cut up fresh in the deli. Not like the big, you know, corporate restaurant chains that your lettuce comes in shredded in a bag, you open it up and you throw it in the bin. You know, takes, you know, 2 or 3 days to get here from California. How long is it in the bag? The big difference is like making a sandwich at home and you don't have to do the work. It's really what the trick is, and using the freshest ingredients possible.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Okay, that was interesting, that last commercial break. For many weeks, we've been playing teachers' ads on City News here, right? The teachers' unions did a big advertising buy to go after the Ford governments because the teachers' unions claiming school's not safe. School's not safe. Tell Ford to make schools safe. And there were all sorts of rumors that the PC Party of Ontario, I think yesterday I said the Ontario government, it's not the Ontario government, it's the PC Party of Ontario, has done a big advertising buy, and you're going to start hearing attack ads against the Trudeau Liberals, and I just heard one. Did you hear that one? Play that one again there.
COVID-19 is changing. It's more deadly and easier to get. Mutant COVID variants are flying into Canada from countries like the UK, South Africa, Brazil, and India. And what did Trudeau's health minister say about protecting our border?
The more countries that have outbreaks, the less relevant borders become.
Trudeau didn't close the borders when the pandemic started. He didn't close the borders when it got worse. Nobody wants a fourth wave. It's time to act. A message from the Ontario PC Party.
Okay. A message from the Ontario PC Party as the Ford attack ads against the Trudeau Liberals begin. And remember, the election campaign will be in it 1 year from now, okay? So all of this is very interesting. Now, we've been talking about the 4-month wait between doses, okay? The 4-month wait between doses. When you look at all the vaccine data points for Canada, when you compare Canada to the rest of the world, the big outlier is the percentage of the population in Canada that's had a second dose. In this country, only 2.6% of the population has had a second dose of vaccine. In other words, 97.4% of our population has not come anywhere near a second dose of vaccine. It's in the paper today. Emergency room doctors waiting for a second dose of vaccine. Can you imagine? Failure is what that is. Peer countries, second doses. The United States, 32%. The UK, 23%. France, 11%. Germany, 8.3%. Italy, 11%. Sweden, 7.5%. Austria, 10%. Switzerland, 11%. Greece, 9%. Canada, 2.6%. It's not a good number. It's not a good number. It's not a good number. Maybe we can improve that number if we didn't have to wait 4 months between doses. That's a Doug Ford decision that could be made today. He's running attack ads against Trudeau. What should happen? Quadja?
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, sir. Thank you for calling. What do you think about this 4-month wait here, sir? Should we shorten that down or what?
Can I first start off with the vaccine distribution?
Vaccine distribution. Go ahead, yeah.
I just don't understand at the beginning, the federal government, how come they just didn't give it to the hard-hit areas like Ontario, Quebec, and then move on instead of dividing it throughout the country a little bit?
Okay.
If they would have given us more vaccine, we wouldn't be in this mess.
All right. Okay.
And then we have people staying at home getting vaccines. I'm considered an essential worker. I haven't had my first shot. My wife is a dental hygienist. She's not even on the list. Her doctor is. He got his.
Okay.
He hasn't got hers.
Oh, really? Your wife hasn't even had a first shot yet?
No, she called and said, "You're not on the list."
Not on the list. Not on the list because you mean dental hygienists are not on the list?
Yep.
Oh, really? Okay.
So you're not on the list.
Interesting.
I guess we have to wait till end of May because we're in our 30s.
In your 30s.
To get the shot.
And you're an essential worker, you said?
Yeah.
What do you do?
I'm in the food business. I'm in the food industry.
Oh, I see. Okay. Right. Like groceries.
We're there.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Gotcha.
We're there, but we're not there.
You're there, but you're not there. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So you'd like to get a first dose before we talk about second doses?
Oh, for sure. Sure. I'd like to get my first shot at some point. My dad just got a second dose, but he has kidney failures. He's got a bunch of medical condition. He just got a second shot yesterday. He didn't have to wait 4 months, though.
Okay. Well, that's good for him. God bless him.
Yeah, he got it within 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of medical conditions myself.
Oh, you do?
I haven't got my first shot.
Right.
Yeah.
You still haven't got your first shot. Yeah. You know, and this was one of the longest wait times in the world, Quadja. 112 days between shots.
It is.
You know, if we're swimming in vaccines now and the government says we got lots of vaccine coming, why are we still waiting 4 months?
I don't know where they are.
Right.
I know where they are.
Okay, Quadja.
I don't know where they are.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your call. Hang in there. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That's a new caller. Karen, good morning in Stittsville.
Good morning. I totally agree with everything you say.
You're smart.
What I don't like, you're not protecting them. You're saying the truth. But CTV on the TV and CBC protect Trudeau at every cost. They never say, they go on Ford, they go on Kenny, they go on everybody else and blame them for the vaccines, but they never say Trudeau. They never say his name. They protect him. And the thing is my cousins in England had their second doses weeks ago, and they're younger than me. And the other thing that they don't say is we have one of the smallest populations in the world in a country, and we don't even have, like you say, 2.whatever%.
2.6,
so
yeah.
Yeah, and what I don't like is they're not saying the truth because they're covering up Trudeau. And if Trudeau's name wasn't Trudeau,
I'm not blaming the media. I'm not blaming the media. The media doesn't run the vaccine program, Karen.
No,
okay.
But if it was the Conservatives doing it, it would be on the news every 15 minutes.
Whatever. Doug, this is a recommendation. It's only a recommendation from NACI, this 4-month wait.
All the countries are doing it. Look at the
Okay. I'm not asking about
so what do
other
you
countries.
think? Do you think that with the few amount of people in the world that we have in Canada, and we can't even get
Karen,
it done?
I've made this point. God bless you, Karen, for calling. I think I've made myself clear. If we are so awash in vaccines, and look, a Trudeau cabinet minister can't bend your ear fast enough. Their only wish is that you had more ears, okay? They would tell you, we have all kinds of supply of vaccine, and it's coming in fast. Millions of doses every day. If that's the case, then over to you, Doug Ford. Why are we still waiting 4 months? This recommendation was made because of supply constraints, which seem to have been resolved now. So is it time for Doug Ford to say, you know what, people? You don't have to wait 4 months anymore. How about 42 days? Okay? That's the best scientific data that we have is for 42 days. We'll make this the last call. Rodney.
That's me. Good
yes,
morning.
Sir.
Good morning.
So look, I hear you just took a call.
Yeah, I took a call and hung up on David and you guys waiting, but that was sort of taking the wind out of my sails. But
so you had a heart procedure scheduled
for tomorrow,
but you originally had one and it was delayed, right?
That was last week. And then they just called you and delayed it again because there's not enough nurses. They took nurses out of the Heart Institute for ICU.
So you have to wait again.
Yep.
Terrible, Rodney. Have you had a shot of vaccine yet?
Yeah, I had a shot of vaccine, and hey, that's one sort of thought frame. And then, and actually on the 21, 28 day, the 60 day, the 120 day, well, hey, that's almost like it's sort of like a fertilizer, 20, 60, 120. But, to have a really good conversation with you on the facts of all the studies and everything, I need to call you in about a year and a half from now. And that's when we're going to have the answer for all.
Well, I know you're going to call back before then. And until then, I wish you continued good health, Rodney. We got to jump here. The news is coming up on City News.
This hour of the Rob Snow Show is brought to you by Cardinal Planning. Protect your... This is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, May 6th. Good morning, I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 9 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's 8. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. 3,424 new confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Ontario, along with 26 more deaths. In Ottawa, 108 new cases of this virus, 23 more in the Eastern Ontario Health Unit, 10 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, 7 more in Renfrew. Results come from over 54,100 completed tests. The province is also reporting that it doled out more than 141,000 COVID vaccine shots yesterday. That is the first time it's been over 140,000 in our province. Groups representing thousands of healthcare workers say their membership needs to be prioritized for full immunization from COVID-19 as they work with patients hospitalized with the virus. Registered Nurses Association of Ontario, the Canadian Union of Public Employees, Service Employees International, those unions, they've asked the province to accelerate second doses for these workers, but they have yet to receive a commitment. Healthcare workers are among the initial groups to be prioritized for a first shot of the dose. Since Ontario's vaccine efforts began, the province has extended dosing intervals for COVID-19 from 21 days to 4 months due to the supply shortage. The group representing healthcare workers says the government has to ensure employees get a second shot soon because they remain at risk when working with patients who have the more transmissible COVID-19 variants. City News time 11:02, and now the forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Enjoy the sunshine that most areas will get into today as we're back into a stretch of clouds and showers beginning tomorrow. The high today, 14 degrees, partly cloudy tonight near 3, and then tomorrow mainly cloudy showers for the afternoon and evening, the high near 13. For today, the high 14.
And right now, 9 degrees in Ottawa. It's 8 degrees in Smiths Falls. A second pop-up clinic held at Overbrook Community Centre this week saw its appointments booked more than an hour before the clinic was set to dole out the first of the vaccines. City News reporter Alex Gouge was there.
The pop-up will be administering 500 doses to Overbrook residents until this evening at 7. Those who were able to secure a slot were given an appointment card with a time to return while waiting in line. Manitoba was able to secure her spot after waiting in line since 5:30 this morning and tells me why she wanted to get her shot.
That's my first time. I haven't gone anywhere before to get it, but since it's in my neighborhood now, then I decided to come out and get it.
Ottawa Public Health is providing less widespread information on these pop-ups and instead informing those in the specific areas through door-to-door outreach, flyers, and by phone or email with assistance from community partners. Another pop-up is planned tomorrow at the AMA Community Centre. 600 doses will be provided to those 18 and up living within 5 high-risk areas identified by OPH, including Ledbury, Herongate, Ridgemont, and Hunt Club Park. In Overbrook, Alex Gouge, City News.
The Quebec government has taken steps to try and fight domestic violence. Female victims will be supported by a single dedicated prosecutor now through their entire legal proceeding. It's a new policy, part of a $71 million plan announced today by the provincial government in Quebec on how to improve domestic violence or how the way the victims are treated by the justice system. Quebec's ministers of justice and public security telling reporters today having a single prosecutor follow a case from start to finish will allow prosecutors to form a bond with the complainant and help them navigate the legal process. Another $27 million over 5 years in Quebec will be spent hiring more police officers. They will be specialized in domestic violence cases. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News 1011 FM
and 1310 AM.
The government of Ontario might shorten the length of time between vaccine doses, 112 days, up to 112 days, And reports indicate it's also looking into the possibility of mixing and matching. First dose of Pfizer, second dose of Moderna. You get the idea. Because of better supplies, an increased shipments, particularly of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. So there's much to discuss once more. And it's a great pleasure to welcome back to our program Professor Dawn Bowdish, Canada Research Chair in Aging and Immunity, McMaster University. Good morning. Nice to hear from you again.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me again.
Okay. 112 days. What more is known now about the decision to make that recommendation about the dosing interval, Professor, 112 days, up to 112 days. What's going on with that?
Yeah, so when the original trials were started, they had a very aggressive schedule getting both doses in between 3 weeks for Pfizer and 28 days for Moderna. And there wasn't exactly science behind that. It's just we all know from decades of vaccinology, one dose is rarely, if ever, enough for a new pathogen. So we knew that people would have to have 2 doses. And the idea then was like, how quickly can we put these together, thinking that would be easier to do in a pandemic. Now, then, of course, after the trials got published, it turned out not to be easy at all to develop the issues and with all the various logistical challenges of getting these vaccines out. So then governments around the world, and the Canadian government's actually been one of the more proactive about extending doses, said, well, let's get as many doses into arms as possible and really start with those really vulnerable people. And by reducing the amount in general, reducing the infections in general, then we'll have fewer infections to worry about, and then we can start thinking about getting those second doses in. Yeah. So if you have kids and you cast back to their childhood vaccination schedules, or if you've ever had an adult vaccine like hepatitis B or HPV, you will remember that most vaccines are administered, the second dose is between 2 and 4 months. So generally for our Canadian schedule, kids go every 3 months or whatever. And that's sort of best practices. So for me, when they extended the dosing schedule out a little bit, I wasn't worried about that because I knew that, there's no reason why it wouldn't work as well. However, it does mean that there is a period where people are not totally protected. And one of the big worries is that when people get their first dose, they think they can go out and rejoin society. And from a vaccinology perspective, right. 1 dose is not vaccinated, 2 doses is.
2 doses is fully vaccinated, right? Correct. And you and I have had this discussion before on our program. Let's say you get 100,000 doses. What do you do? Mm-hmm. Do you give it to 100,000 people who haven't had a single dose yet? Mm-hmm. Or do you give it to 50,000 people and then put 50,000 in the freezer? Mm-hmm. Our decision has been, well, let's try and get it to 100,000 people, mm-hmm. right? Would you say that's been an effective strategy so far?
I think it has been. Okay. Overall, I support it. I mean, I was very, very grateful when we went to the long-term care homes. We didn't delay their dosage, and we went there first because just the death and destruction was just devastating. And old, frail people in long-term care, they are not going to be they'll be barely protected with 1 dose. So the fact that we held and gave them the 2-dose schedule, I think, was an excellent choice. And then starting with our oldest adults, we are seeing, they are not the ones in the ICU right now, and the very few that are people who haven't had any shot of the vaccine. So also very good decisions for keeping hospital usage out. But here's a little funny subtlety about how this infection works that I think we're really seeing the effects of now. If you go to Ottawa Public Health website and you look at the little graph of how many cases there are, how many people have them, repeat that with any public health unit in Ontario or even Canada, okay. You'll see that the majority of the infections are actually in young people. So they're not,
now,
they're the 20-somethings, they're young people who work in the service industry. They've got lots of social contacts from their work. They're in lowly paid jobs. These are the folks that actually have a lot of infections and actually spread a lot of the infection, but they don't end up in the hospital. So part of our doses and arms strategy was to relieve pressure in the hospitals and to get people out of the hospitals. But what these new variants are doing is they're bringing younger and younger people into the hospital. So to really cut this third wave, we need to be getting doses in arms of those younger people, especially in vulnerable communities and in vulnerable essential services positions.
Okay. I guess here is my worry is how do we know 4 months is okay when we've barely been doing vaccinations for 4 months? Now, look, you're Oxford trained with lots of letters after your name. I'm just a radio broadcaster. So you read these reports, the scientific journals with a much deeper knowledge set than I do. But this is April edition BC Medical Journal, which has done 2 papers on this now, one in March and one in April, based on published and unpublished data about the NACI recommendation on 112 days between doses, up to. And it says in the April edition, given that less than 4 months have passed, and I'm quoting here, since the vaccine was approved in any jurisdiction, longer-term data are not yet available. Whether there is a further decline in immunity beyond day 42 is not yet known. Beyond day 42, in other words, beyond 6 weeks. But here we're asking Canadians to wait 16 weeks. So what is known about the quote-unquote further decline in immunity beyond day 42? Has that knowledge improved, do you think?
Not really. Unfortunately, our comparator groups are Israel, which has done an incredible job with vaccination, but also used mostly on time. Most people, there was a slight delay, but used a fairly close to on-time schedule. Our second comparator group is England, but that's a little, or the UK rather, but that's a little complicated because they use mostly the AstraZeneca, and so the dosing schedule is a little bit different for that.
Right.
So we really are making it up as we go along. I will say, though, Public Health Ontario released their data today about when people are getting infections after they've had the first dose. The vast majority of them are before 2 weeks because it takes the immune system 10 to 14 days to ramp up. So after your first dose, you can't expect to be protected for 2 weeks. And then the next chunk of infections are between 21 days and 42 days. And then it actually peters off pretty consistently as the immune system is sort of maturing and reflecting and making better and better antibodies and things like that. So we aren't seeing a huge increase in infections in people at that 4 month mark. We're actually seeing that those seem to be a little bit lower. Now, this can change because, of course, these variants of concern are making life extremely difficult right now and sneaking into some of these under-vaccinated people. But right now, we're not seeing that people who are close to their 4 month time point are not protected. Having said that, though, I am so optimistic about all of the increased shipments we're going to be getting from Pfizer, especially because most of our healthcare workers did get either the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccine. So there's a lot of optimism that we will be able to get them the booster maybe sooner than we had originally predicted at 4 months. So there's a lot of optimism right now in the community about that.
Okay, I want to ask you, Canada Research Chair Aging and Immunity, about before anyone heard of COVID-19, when it comes to vaccination, what would be a good number in terms of efficacy? Because we're kind of in search for perfection here, right? Yeah. So, I mean, with things like MMR, pertussis, HPV, or even seasonal flu and efficacy, I mean, can you give us what?
Sure. Yeah. So measles is a great example because it is one of the most contagious viruses on the planet. There's all sorts of case studies about, somebody walking through an airport with somebody else who had measles an hour earlier and getting it. It's incredibly contagious. So that vaccine has about 93 to 95% efficacy. So it protects most people. And so that means we have to have about 90 to 95% of people vaccinated to keep us all protected. So that's sort of the most we can expect for that. Influenza is a little bit of a tough call because it really, really peters off as you get older. So for kids, influenza vaccine is really very good, 80, 85%, 90% protection. But as you get older and older, it's not so much. In some years, it's pretty much ineffective for older adults. So had this been an influenza pandemic, we wouldn't have been vaccinating all the long-term care residents with quite so much gusto. We'd be doing the staff, the visitors, and trying to keep those infections out that way. So as far as the COVID vaccine goes for older adults, including long-term care residents, the 80-year-old, the 90-year-old. I mean, the efficacy rate is not the 95% we've all heard about. It's probably something more like 90 or 87. But wow, what a joy as somebody who studies the aging immune system.
Right.
We have never seen protection like that in older adults and frail older adults. Never. And so that has really changed the face of the game for these older people. But the problem with this virus is it is a mutator, and it does look like it tries to sneak under the radar of people who don't have really strong antibody responses. So we're now starting to look at booster shots as being part of our future. The vaccine works well, but if those levels creep down and the virus can creep in, we have to keep pushing those antibody levels back up with booster shots. So
okay, one final question here then, on this idea that we mix and match. What do you think that's feasible? What's your thought?
I'll be honest with you. I'll tell you a story. I was at a meeting with a bunch of immunologists last Friday, and they were so excited about mixing and matching. Everyone had their bets in about which combination they personally wanted, because one of the little secrets of immunology is actually mixing and matching often works great. Is that vaccines are just a little bit different, similar enough, but a little bit different, then the immune system really gets a really strong trigger. So historically, mixing and matching has been really effective. The trials are currently going on in the UK because they use mostly AstraZeneca in young people, and now they're looking at should we boost with a Pfizer, another AstraZeneca, that sort of thing. Canada, we've had a real mix of which vaccines we've used, so those trials are going to be and implementing that's going to be a little bit more complicated. But personally, if someone were to say to me, Dawn, you're going to get a dose of something that wasn't your first dose, I'd actually be quite excited about that. There's no reason to suggest it won't work, and there's lots of previous data suggesting that it'll work really nicely.
What immunologists talk about when they get together on the Zoom call. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, Dr. Dawn Bowdish, thank you. Always good. Bye-bye. Canada
Bye-bye.
Research Chair, Aging and Immunity, McMaster University in Hamilton. Very good interview. Very, very, very knowledgeable there. 11:17, Rob Snow Show, City News.
The Rob.
It's a space that needs to be lived in. It's a space that people, have to have an experience of more than just art on the walls. I think, yes, the art on the walls is fun, and it's fun to walk around and see all the beautiful things, and the way Dominic and Edith have curated the gallery is certainly something worth seeing. But coming by and asking questions, again, to Dominic's point of view is, interrupt him, ask questions. I'm here on most of the days too. We have Luce that comes in, Nancy that comes in. So we have quite a few opportunities for people to come in and see the process, and of course ask a few questions. It's a great space. Basically, the one event that we did do, is the jazz shows, the jazz and blues shows. And I think the weird thing to let you know is that the acoustics in here are really amazing. I think that was the first thing that blew me away when we started doing shows, or when I was helping out with the shows. The other part of the business too is we do rent it out for special occasions too. So a few weddings, birthday parties, product launches, that kind of thing. So they're also a lot of fun. We do have one artist that's from the States, but of the 30 odd artists, the rest are from either Quebec, Ontario, and one beautiful woman from BC. It's definitely part of the philosophy to maintain and canvas and show the beauty that we have in our backyard. You have the very, very strong personalities in Edith and Dominic, of course. It's wonderful to see how that actually balances out in the rest of the gallery. Without necessarily being, an objective, we basically have half female artists and half male artists in this gallery. But I can't say it's anything more than choosing the best people, and that's just the way it is. And I love that. I think it's great. You go through and you're like, wow, it's all pretty cool. And yep, it's half are women and half are men. It's cool. Like everyone else, we didn't know what to think, right? It's overwhelming at first. You just know that things are closed. And now you're trying to figure out what you do during that downtime, which I think everyone did. And I think in March, the first close, the first shutdown, it was a lot of actually recuperating and resting and not worrying too much on the spot. It's running a gallery is a bit like running a marathon with sprints. So there comes a time where, it's actually nice to just take a break. And then you wake up and realize that, okay, now it's time to wake up and deal with this new reality. From my perspective anyways, I think a gallery can be overwhelming, and I like to make it fun. So you're going to come in, I'll ask you questions, I might even joke around with you. The most people come here, they're not really going to buy art, but they could have a fun time and talk about it, right? And one of the things the gallery does offer is for local purchases, we'll be happy to drive it to your house and hang it for you.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Focusing on some local issues right now with the managing editor of Your Community Voice newspapers, Pat Uguccioni. Welcome back.
Good morning.
How are you this week?
I'm great, thanks.
You got your dose?
Got my dose 2.5 weeks ago.
Oh, 2.5 weeks ago. So that's probably the second, if not third time I've asked you that.
That's I got the AZ. So far, so good.
Right. So only 5.5 more weeks to go, or whatever. How many weeks do you have to wait? 2.5 weeks. 13.5 weeks to go until your second dose.
And I got
right?
it through a pharmacy, and actually don't have a second date. I'll have to look.
Oh, you don't have a second date yet?
Yeah, I'll have to look into how that works.
Well, I mean, it seems to be ramping up, right?
For sure.
That was certainly the message from city officials over the last week.
Yeah, exciting things going on. As your last guest said, maybe I can even get a Pfizer or Moderna instead, and mix and match.
Mix and match, yeah, mix and match. Wasn't that interesting?
Yeah.
That was not what I expected her to say. I expected her to be very cautious, but she said, "Oh, actually, we're quite excited about that."
Yeah,
the opportunity for you.
It's amazing
really
what's going on.
Okay, so I want to ask you, Pat, because we when we talk about infill and intensification and density, building up, say, instead of out, it seems we're building up even out.
That's right.
Right? So it's really interesting, and this is right in your wheelhouse because you have so many readers of the Ottawa Community Voice newspapers in Stittsville. Right. Tell us about this high-density development from Lepin and how it's going over out there, 18-story complex.
Right. So a lot of attention is being given to the 18 stories, but this is a development that's going to have a 9-story building and a 6-story building to begin with. And the 9-story building will front onto a residential street, but it'll be one of these sort of tiered things. So it'll be 4 stories and then 6 and then 9. So we won't have 9 stories fronting on a residential street, and that was a concession the builder did through the back and forth of public consultation. And then there's a 6-story building on the site. The 18-story building won't come for at least 3, 4, or 5 years because the city, while the planning department has approved this development, they've put a hold on it that they can't build the 18-story building until Robert Grant Avenue, it's called. The main spine road through there is extended from what's called Abbott Street up to Hazeldean Street and eventually up to the 417. So the 18-story building is getting a lot of attention, but it won't be built for quite a few years.
Right.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, not going over well, is it?
No. And like you said, this is sort of another test of the city's new official plan, where they're trying to intensify the suburbs and the city of Ottawa at large. Mm-hmm. And so this is another test case, and obviously people. It hasn't gone over well with the people that live on what's called Livery Street, which this new development will front onto.
Okay, are they condos or apartments?
No, they're apartments, and that's another thing about this.
Because it's rental housing, right?
It's rental, and which is very, very much needed in the suburbs. So your kids can move out and stay in the community, or if you're downsizing from a house, you can rent in the community that you've lived in your whole adult life. So it's very, very much needed out that way.
Is it quote unquote transit oriented development? I'm trying to think when is Stittsville going to get an O train for crying out loud? I mean,
right. But the Robert Grant Avenue is considered an arterial road, so it is considered a transit corridor. It is far out until rail gets there, but rail is coming. Sort of 2030 time frame, but so that is another reason. another plus why the planning department has approved this, and that's a directive from the province too, to approve these development applications that are on transit corridors. So yeah.
Okay. So listen, I have to ask you about something here, and we're trying to track down Bob Chiarelli, and I know Bob was out campaigning for you during your by-election.
He was.
You said, right? Okay. So he tagged me in a tweet, which I thought was kind of weird. Like, Bob Chiarelli tagging me.
Yeah, I saw those.
Still receiving a lot of inquiries from friends and colleagues asking, quote, what do you think of our LRT future? Anxiety for resolution abounds. And then he tagged just about everybody in the Ottawa media here.
Yeah,
what's that all about?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, I do know him. I don't know. It looks like his Twitter account has sort of come back to life, because I do follow him. I've always followed him, and I did notice that he's tweeted a couple of things out this week. But yeah,
is he going to run for something, Pat?
I mean, I can tell you that he's thinking about it, and he has told people that. So I think this might be another sign that he's sort of putting the feelers out there, and then he might start speaking out on different issues. I noticed he said something about the Ottawa Hospital as well after that development was unveiled the other day. So obviously he's going to start speaking about issues, and so to see what kind of reaction he gets and sort of gauge public opinion through that. I mean,
kind of like, don't forget about me, you know?
Exactly. I mean, because if you look at his Twitter account, and I did, it's been a couple of years since he tweeted, I guess since the last election. So he's obviously woken up that account, and he's going to start speaking out on different issues. So, what better way to do it that way? And I did notice that he tagged the media, which obviously shows that he sort of understands, the power of social media these days.
Sure.
To get attention.
Yeah, and the traditional media as well, right?
That's right.
Kind of like, don't forget about me. I mean, this is, whatever people think of him, because a lot of people think yesterday's man, like 78 years old.
Right.
Chiarelli, no thanks.
An aging population in this state, too, if you look at the demographics.
But also, former mayor of Ottawa, former Ontario cabinet minister. If it takes organization and connections to win a mayor's race, who has better ones than him?
Right, and obviously, when you're running municipally, you don't want to sound too partisan, but he does have obviously a liberal history, and this is a liberal town for the most part. So,
I know. I mean, to me, a run for him for mayor, not a sure thing, but certainly more of a possibility if Mayor Watson announces, I'm not running again.
Right.
Then
it'd be interesting if you could get him on your show to ask him, whether it matters whether Jim Watson's there or not.
Yeah.
But I mean, the fact if Mayor Watson ran again, that would probably keep a lot of people out of the race. But it'd be interesting to know if Bob Chiarelli would take him on.
Yeah. Plus, we're a year out from a provincial election. I don't know if they've nominated a candidate in his old riding, but
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that, but. I think the incumbent Jeremy Roberts has been renominated, I believe. But yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think being in the media, a good mayor's race is good for all of the wards. Really,
imagine it, the political comeback of Bob Chiarelli at 78 years old.
He's come off the mat a couple of times. I mean, he's still you say he's 78, but he's still a vital man, and certainly obviously keeps tabs on what's going on. So.
Okay. Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
It sure is, yeah. Okay, Pat, thank you. Great to hear from you again this week. Thanks for the time.
No problem.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. The managing editor, your Ottawa Community Voice newspapers, Pat Uguccioni, back right after the news. Turn our attention to federal politics. The defense critic for the Conservative Party will join me, James Bezan. This is City News.
The Rob Snow Show.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, the 6th of May. Good morning. I'm Sarah Buchan. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, some sunshine, a few clouds, and 10 degrees. Here's what's making news right now. Happening now west of Centertown in Ottawa. The Ottawa Police Guns and Gangs Unit on the scene of a shooting this morning near Somerset West and Bronson. Ottawa Police sharing on Twitter just after 10:30 this morning, a police operation had closed Somerset West near Cambridge Street. Just before 11 o'clock, the Guns and Gangs Unit confirmed a shooting with two men seen fleeing the area. No injuries reported, but police remain on the scene. They're looking to talk to any witnesses. Anyone with information should contact Ottawa Police or leave an anonymous tip with Crime Stoppers. Provincial health officials report 108 new cases of COVID-19 in Ottawa out of 3,424 new cases across Ontario. 26 more people in this province have died due to the virus. Elsewhere locally, the Leeds Grenville Lanark Health Unit confirms 8 new cases of COVID-19, 4 of those in the past 24 hours. The province is reporting 23 new cases in Eastern Ontario and 7 in Renfrew County. The local health units update their numbers in the afternoon. Federal Housing Agency says widespread immunity to COVID-19 could moderate the pace and price of home sales by the end of 2023. The Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation says economic conditions could return to pre-pandemic levels by then if broad immunity is achieved this year. The Federal Housing Agency predicts sales will be slowed by increasing mortgage rates and high prices seen in existing home markets. I'm Sarah Buchan. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Turning our attention to the federal political scene, the Bloc Québécois sided with the Liberals yesterday. They voted down a motion. It was a non-binding motion. It called for the dismissal of the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, Katie Telford. Final vote 209 to 122. This is the latest turn of events in the military leadership crisis that's been going on for months now because of allegations of sexual impropriety. Let's get into all the maneuvering here. James Bezan is a Conservative member of Parliament. He is the defense critic for the official opposition. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on the show.
It's nice to hear from you, Mr. Bezan. What did your motion call for?
Well, essentially, we want to call Justin Trudeau's bluff. If we are to believe the Prime Minister that he has been telling the truth, and he definitely wants all Canadians to believe that he had no knowledge that there was any evidence of sexual misconduct against General Vance, that he was kept out of the loop. So if he was kept out of the loop, then he would fire his chief of staff, because we know from testimony at committee that Elder Marquez, who used to be a senior advisor to the Prime Minister, was told by Katie Telford, the chief of staff to Justin Trudeau, that there was allegations against General Vance. And for Katie Telford not to inform the Prime Minister about this type of misconduct, this sexual misconduct, then she not only failed to inform the Prime Minister that there was a concern around national security, because by the actions of General Vance, he opened himself up to blackmail and espionage. So she failed to do her job, and so she should be fired. But we believe that she did tell the Prime Minister and was in part of covering up this truth for the past 3 years. And so either he fires her because she didn't tell him, or he's complicit in this cover-up, and he's been lying to Canadians through this whole scandal around General Vance's sexual misconduct allegations.
So the Prime Minister has said that he didn't know that the allegations against Mr. Vance were of a Me Too nature, that he didn't know they were about a Me Too type complaint. What makes you doubt that? What has come out that makes you doubt that?
Because I believe that the Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister would immediately tell the Prime Minister of Canada that the top soldier in the land, the highest ranking military officer with the top security clearance, was compromised. I don't think that they would sit back and go, whoa, we got a sexual misconduct allegation. Let's not tell the Prime Minister. And so that motion that we voted on yesterday was to ensure that there was accountability throughout the entire process here, from the Chief of Defence Staff to the Minister of Defence, Harjit Sajjan, to the Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister, Katie Telford, and right up to Justin Trudeau. It's about calling their bluff and making sure that we are being honest with Canadians, and more importantly, that we are being honest with those that serve in the Canadian Armed Forces.
Okay. So just so everybody understands, at the point when Katie Telford knows about the allegations, based on the testimony that was delivered by Elder Marquez, another senior advisor to the Prime Minister, right? Works in the Prime Minister's office, right? Right. Mr. Bezan? Okay. Yep. And he testified at the committee that he told Katie Telford about this. Right?
So the way that the allegations were brought forward by former military ombudsman Gary Walborn to Minister Sajjan, March 1st, 2018.
Yeah.
Minister Sajjan
3 years ago
refused to take the evidence, pushed it away from the table and said, I don't want to see it. And now has been trying to hide behind that he didn't want to be politically interfering in an investigation. What investigation? There was no investigation. He actually had a chance to get his hands on the evidence and act on it. So right away, we got Minister Sajjan failed to do his duty and responsibility as minister as described under the National Defence Act. Mm-hmm. Then he handed it off to his Chief of Staff at that time, Zita Estravis. Zita Estravis, now we find out, contacted Katie Telford as Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister. And Katie Telford then tasked Elder Marquez to look into these allegations. And then we had emails going back and forth and briefing notes between the Prime Minister's office, Privy Council's office, all talking about sexual harassment allegations against General Vance. There is no way anyone in their right mind believes that they didn't inform or brief Prime Minister Trudeau that this was happening. And they let it all fall by the wayside by the end of March 2018 and have covered this up for 3 years. And in that process, not only did they conveniently forget about General Vance's misconduct allegations. They gave General Vance a raise, upwards of $50,000. They extended his contract.
And when did that happen, sir? Just remind us, when did that happen?
So that all took place from the end of 2018 to the beginning of 2019. They extended his contract, gave him a raise, and left him in charge of Operation Honor, which has now been completely destroyed because of the hypocrisy surrounding General Vance himself. So, if they were serious about stomping out sexual misconduct, if they were serious about standing up for the victims of sexual misconduct, not just writ large, but specifically for the women and men who have faced sexual misconduct within the Canadian Armed Forces, they would have acted. But they decided to cover this up, and maybe it's tied to that, Vance was a key witness and provided testimony surrounding the Vice Admiral Mark Norman affair, and that he was wrongfully accused and went through a whole fiasco. And then, we know that on March 8th, 2018, the actual charges by the RCMP were laid against Vice Admiral Mark Norman at that point in time. We know that the Prime Minister was involved in his own Me Too scandal, what happened out in the Kokanee, right? That was floating around in February of 2018. So, and we know that there was PMO staffer Claude Eric Gagné, who also was being dealt with within the Prime Minister's office for sexual misconduct. So there was a whole litany of things going on at that time. And so I think the decision was made, let's bury the General Vance allegations, and covered it up for the last 3 years, and have now, because of their inaction, or maybe it is an action, if we want to call a cover-up an actual thing that they've done, then, it has destroyed the morale, the trust, and confidence of our troops in leadership, in the political leadership, and it is definitely undermining the trust of Canadians. But
you're saying this is what we're led to believe. Okay, the Ombudsman told Sajan, who told his chief of staff, who informed Katie Telford, who informed Elder Marquez, all of these people around the Prime Minister, but the Prime Minister says he didn't know. Right?
That's exactly what Prime Minister claims.
Said, I didn't know it was of a Me Too
nature. Which I think all of us are having a great deal.
Right, and that was in March of 2018, and by the end of 2018, his term was extended and he was given a pay raise.
Right. And then it all became news when it broke, 3 months ago, and the Liberals have been,
right. So recently, the Defense Minister Sajan has apologized, and he has announced this review by former Supreme Court Justice Louise Arbour. What do you think about that course of action, Mr. Bezan?
Well, it's last week's announcement by Minister Sajan is not action. This is again, and really was a feigned apology. It was apologizing in general, but he never apologized for his personal taking responsibility for his lack of action on taking the evidence and acting, making sure there was an investigation done on these allegations, and failed the woman in particular who brought forward those allegations to former Defense Ombudsman Walburn. But this review that they announced is just about taking the pressure off. It's about it's helping the Liberals with their cover up on sexual misconduct. They're punting any decisions 12 to 16 months down the road. Probably after, or they're hoping to get past the next election before they actually have to come up with any report. And I can tell you this, that the women and men who serve in uniform don't want another report. They want results. And yes, I know that there's some nuanced differences between the work that already was done by a Justice, Marie Deschamps, when she brought forward her report, almost 6 years ago. The Liberals let that report collect dust on Minister Sajan's desk, and they failed to take action on it. And so we need to make sure that the things that were suggested in there are acted upon. There's no reason to wait another 12 to 16 months. Maybe, Justice Arbour will come forward with some great ideas on how we change culture and within the institution, to take out the misogyny and the hypermasculinity, which has already been identified by Justice Deschamps in her report of 2015. But we as Conservatives already said, let's institute some of these recommendations that have been sitting on Sajan's desk.
Sure.
Let's have that service-wide independent investigation of the entire military, top to bottom, including the Chief of Defense Staff. So let's make sure that we bring in place the external independent body that's outside of the chain of command where sexual misconduct complaints can come forward, get the resources and support they need, as well as be ensured that proper investigations and follow through and disciplinary actions are taken. And then while this is going on, let's suspend all the general and flag officer promotions and salary increases until we get down to the bottom of this and that all of the problems are cleaned out of the system before we start putting people back into, full-time command positions. So, we need to ensure that there's greater representation of women and those that are underrepresented in Canada within the Canadian Armed Forces. And it's only then that we'll get to that culture change that's needed and the respect of all members across the board so that you can go to work without fear of facing sexual misconduct and sexual harassment on a daily basis.
Thank you, Mr. Bezan, for your time this morning.
Hey, anytime, Rob.
Yeah, James Bezan, Conservative MP, Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman, the riding, Manitoba riding, National Defense Critic. When we come back, we're going to talk about the big commodities run and what it means for inflation and interest rates with the chief economist and managing director of economics at BMO Financial Group, Doug Porter, here on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
The Rob Snow Show.
I wanted to give gifts to my volunteers, so I started making, I knew this is a skill I had, so I made chocolate that had a cultural based with a teaching, because culture here is not just a little part, it's the large part, it's the fundamental part of our organization. So then we started doing, just little programs, and we sell a few at a fair, and then we started getting contracts. People were starting to enjoy the chocolates, and started getting more and more contracts all across Canada. Then we decided to become a social enterprise, and we were able to create 2 jobs, and Val is one of our chocolatiers, very talented. We were able to help her with employment.
We started just with a little bit in the kitchen, doing a little bit of chocolate together, and next thing, it's just kind of taken off. And it's great because I love to be creative, and we get to create a lot and make up stuff. And it's just I just love it. It's just great that we get to make money back for Wabano. And it's helping me out, and we're helping just everybody out, Wabano and everything.
We met a very socially conscious business owner, being around town, and we decided to partner because beans and chocolate, coffee and chocolate are sort of created the same way, and there's and they're very one origin bean, so it was a good pairing together, and it's been a fantastic partnership for both of us.
I was fortunate enough to get introduced to Purat, the head of Wabano Fine Chocolates, through a local networking group. And I was completely intrigued by the social enterprise that she was running, and then I looked at what we were doing, trying to support local business and supporting local communities, and it was a perfect match, and it's been fantastic ever since.
We make every batch by hand. We temper it by hand to get to the consistency it needs to be to make a good chocolate. And one of the best, also wonderful things we did, we've connected with Ed, with being around town, and our coffee bars have been amazing hit. So we're really excited about the connection with our coffee.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
All week we've been talking about the move into commodities, which is a good news story for Canada because we have an abundance of all the hot commodities right now. Agricultural commodities, we talked about that yesterday. Corn, soybeans, grains, oilseeds, huge demand, multi-year highs. Oil prices are coming back. Iron ore, multi-year highs. Base metals, copper, $10,000 a ton. Lumber prices, that's all over the news because of the home renovation boom. But also, maybe part of this is the result of what $1 trillion infrastructure plan looks like from the White House. But what does it mean for inflation? That's a big question. And Doug Porter joins me now, Chief Economist, Managing Director, Economics at BMO Financial Group. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
And your headline for your most recent Talking Points memo says prices rising here, there, and everywhere, and we should be paying attention to inflation. Why do you say that, Doug?
Well, it's interesting because we've just come out of the deepest downturn that the global economy has seen in the post-war era, and here we are talking about high-side inflation risk, which to me is incredible, maybe one of the most remarkable aspects of this cycle. And part of it was well known. I mean, we're comparing ourselves to the extreme situation of a year ago when, for a heartbeat, oil prices actually went negative. So, of course, the headline numbers we're going to print some pretty meaty numbers this spring, but this has gone well beyond that. What we're seeing is just this rush of demand, partly because of the stimulus measures that you just spoke about, bumping up against supply that's having a little bit of trouble getting, back fully into gear. Many have said it's easy to shut an economy. It's painful, but it's easy. It's much tougher to get it going again, and we're finding supply bottlenecks all over the place. Now, the view, at least among the Fed, and I would say the financial markets in general, is that this is largely temporary and eventually the supply chain kinks will work their way out. Mm-hmm. But it's not 100% clear that's what's going to happen. So I think there are some serious risks here that this inflation bout might end up being a little bit more temporary or something more than just temporary.
Okay, but before we get to the risks, because, my gosh, everybody wants some good news. All of these commodities being in such high demand, this must be a good news story for Canada, Doug Porter.
Oh, it certainly is. And that's, I would say that is the number one reason why the Canadian dollar is now close to 82 cents. Many have pointed to the Bank of Canada being more hawkish than the Fed. That gave the currency a little bit of a push. But the big story is just this broad-based nature and the strength of commodity prices we're seeing. It's interesting that the Bank of Canada's own commodity price index is now at an all-time high, and it's being led by the non-energy sector, and the energy side is doing fine. But it's the non-energy sector that is at a record high, and it's right across the board. And you listed a number of the commodities. Lumber is the biggest story, but it is very broadly based.
Okay, so what are the risks here then?
I would say the risks are that this becomes a little bit more entrenched. It starts leading to broad-based wage pressure that really sticks. Now, some would say that, and I would agree, that a little bit of wage pressure is not a bad thing at this point. But, the concern is that it leads to more sustained and rapid increases in wages that then get entrenched in inflation on a longer-term basis. I personally don't, I still think that ultimately the Fed will be proved correct, that this will fade over time. But I think it's going to last a little bit longer than the Fed expects, and there are a little bit more serious risks that this becomes a bit more of a meaningful episode of inflation than I think what policymakers are looking at this point.
Okay. So what does it mean for interest rates? Because normally when I would speak with economists over the last year, they would say, Rob, they're not going to, there's no way the Bank of Canada is going to raise interest rates this year, and we don't see them raising them maybe until well into next year. Does any of what's happened recently rethink a time frame at the Bank of Canada? What's your forecast now, Doug Porter?
Well, the Bank of Canada already has brought forward somewhat its view on when interest rates might begin to rise. I mean, it's subtle, But instead of talking about sometime in 2023, they're now talking about there's a possibility they might be going up at some point in 2022. Meanwhile, the Fed is steadfast as ever, incredibly patient. But I think that's a message they're going to send until we really have put the pandemic behind us and employment is fully improved. And then I suspect the message, certainly from the Fed and also from the Bank of Canada, will change pretty abruptly when we do have a more complete recovery in the job market. Our view is that complete recovery, it might still take another year, but I think the message is going to change quite quickly around that time.
Do things fundamentally change with the Canadian economy because the loonie is above 80 cents? Or can our current account situation deal with that right now, and our trade situation deal with an 81 cent dollar right now?
Well, clearly the run-up in commodity prices and the lift in the Canadian dollar has important implications for different regions and different sectors of the economy. There are some winners and some losers from that. I would say overall, though, the strength in commodity prices overwhelms the increase in the Canadian dollar that we've seen for the economy as a whole. So it's a net positive for Canada. It essentially boosts our national income. It boosts our buying power as the currency goes up. Yes, manufacturers, industries that have to compete internationally are harmed by this, no question. But the winners do outpace the losers on that front. We benefit from a rise in commodity prices as a nation.
Okay. Is our economy, everybody's housing mad now. It's all over the place. It's in the media every day. Is our economy becoming too dependent on housing activity, Doug Porter? What do you think?
Oh, I think it is. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Hopefully it will shift over the next year as we reopen and sectors of the economy that have been shut down, do start contributing again or able to contribute again, as the resource sector continues to do well, and hopefully manufacturing gets back into gear more so as things do reopen and the U.S. economy chugs along. I think you will see housing's relative share of the economy fade somewhat over the next year, but it is badly imbalanced at this point. A number of people have spoken about the fact that housing is now more than 9% of GDP. I would just stress that is only the residential construction part. That doesn't even include, what people spend on utilities and basically on rent and that sort of thing. When you look at a broad measure of housing, it's actually more than 20% of the economy. That is much higher than in the U.S., for instance. Just to pick one example, I think it's very safe to say that we've become far too dependent.
Thank you, Doug Porter, for this morning. Great stuff.
Okay, thanks for having me, Rob.
Chief Economist, Managing Director of Economics, BMO Financial Group. That's it for the Rob Snow Show for today. Tomorrow's Friday Free for All during our Talkback Hour. Join us. The news next on City News.
The Rob Snow Show.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV.